and related operations.
All right, and we're back.
All right. Good evening. I'd like to call the Henrietta Town Board meeting for Wednesday, May 26, 2021 to order. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Here.
Councilmember Stafford,
Here.
Councilmember Safranek,
Here.
Councilmember Bolsner. I'm sorry, did I hear you, Lisa?
Sorry, I'll pull it close.
Oh, sorry, there she is. I was like, I can see you. But Supervisor Schultz.
Here. At first, I thought you had forgotten me.
Yeah.
Didn't realize you couldn't hear her. We'll begin this evening with a silent prayer followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can I get a motion for the minutes?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, I make a motion to approve the minutes from May 12th, 2021.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
All right. First up, we have public hearing for, public presentation for the Architectural Heritage Award for 1330 Calkins Road. Would you come on up and speak?
Tina Thompson, Town Historian, 37 Tumbleweed Drive. Mr. Supervisor, members of the Town Board, I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the Historic Site Committee. May is National Preservation Month, and the Historic Site Committee is delighted to recognize this beautiful federal-style colonial located at 1330 Calkins Road that became the home of David and Molly Nicodem in 1976. Probably built in the 1830s, this house has been home to many families. The family that resided here the longest is the family of John Robertson, who bought the property in 1869. You can see on the 1902 map of Monroe County that John was a successful farmer who owned approximately 165 acres. His property was called Trout Spring Farm because, according to anecdotes, there was a stream full of trout that ran through the farm. You can also see that the neighbor across the road was a Delbert Tinker, and I think we're all familiar with the Tinker homestead. The 1880 federal census shows John Robertson, age 61, and his wife Rebecca, age 50, and 6 children living here. The oldest was 22 and the youngest was 12. 2 other people living on the farm were laborers, Owen Hines, age 28, and John Robertson's nephew, Thaddeus Skilton, who was 20. The agricultural census gives us an idea of what was being grown and produced on the farm. In 1880, Trout Spring Farm was valued at $16,000. In today's money, that's about $547,000. Livestock included 7 horses, 4 milch or milking cows, 60 poultry, 39 swine, and 2 sheep. They had originally purchased 3 sheep, but 1 was killed by dogs. Products that were harvested from this acreage included 20 tons of hay, 450 bushels of barley, 350 bushels of Indian corn, 500 bushels of oats, and 700 bushels of wheat. They also grew 1,200 bushels of Irish potatoes, and 6 acres of orchards yielded 200 bushels of apples. 400 pounds of butter were also made on the farm. You can see that farms were much more diversified in the products that they grew and produced than they are today. By 1900, John was a widower living with his youngest son, Willett, and 2 unmarried daughters, Marion and Hannah. Willett became the head of the household in 1906 when his father died. When Willett died in 1948, family relatives inherited the property. As in other areas of Henrietta, the farmland was sold for housing developments. Fortunately, the federal-style farmhouse that has been owned and appreciated by families who have worked countless hours and spent substantial sums of money to maintain this property. David and Molly Nicodem raised their boys here, and today their grandchildren enjoy visiting this lovely home. In 2018, the town board recognized Molly Nicodem for her 40 years of service on the Historic Site Committee. And the committee was surprised that her home had not previously received an award. So we are very pleased that we can recognize at this time Molly and David Nicodem for the exceptional care they have shown in maintaining this lovely farmhouse. Congratulations, Molly and David, on receiving the Historic Site Committee's 2021 Architectural Heritage Award.
Sorry for the last minute. We went and had we were going to put it in a frame, and then my admin, who was going to do that today, ended up calling in, unable to come in. So I just realized it as I was looking at it, so I went and grabbed it.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. This is greatly appreciated. When we moved in there in 1976, it was the bicentennial year, I believe. And we had 3 young sons. And they kind of thought it was strange to go into such an old house. You know, we had come from Gatehouse Trail, which was new homes and were lovely. But this presented something that I kind of always wanted, as we both had an interest in older homes and the 6 fireplaces and all the different little things about the home that you don't find in the modern day homes. And I think, as Tina mentioned, one of the windows in the upstairs bedroom, it's scrolled, very fancy scrolled writing, "Ferdinand loves Elizabeth." And it's just so heart-wrenching, really, because I have no idea who these people were. And Tina said they didn't have a record of any Ferdinand and Elizabeth. But anyhow, we love the home and we've enjoyed the fireplaces. It's a lot of upkeep to it, of course. But one little anecdote I will tell you, when we moved in there, we had 3 sons and 4 bedrooms. And shortly thereafter, we had a 4th son. And Mike Murphy was a councilman. And he stated that you just couldn't let it go, could you? You had to have the 4th son to fill the 4th bedroom. But we've enjoyed staying there, living there. And thank you so much for this award. It's very greatly appreciated. Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Congratulations.
Somebody got a camera ready?
I can take a photo for
Somebody turn, I'm trying to turn, wait, I got one right here. Let's see here. Got one right here. Let's go. Boom.
First, we want facing Gary.
Sure.
This is your. That's right. Okay,
Thank you.
Can we come in front of the podium? Can I get one this way too?
sure. Come around the front.
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
Do you want to take one with Tina up there as well?
Yeah.
It would be really nice to have Tina there. Yes, she should. Steve, why don't you stay up and take one with you and Tina? And
I wanted to,
well, yeah, but it's nice with the three of you.
I got to stay out, so the three of you.
Come on, it's right here, help it. Okay, we got it.
Got it.
Roses.
Okay, here we go.
Congratulations.
Next up, we have a public hearing for a proposed law to amend the Henrietta Town Code, Chapter 273, to limit parking in cul-de-sacs. Before we start bringing people up, I just want to explain a little bit more detail about the process and what we're looking at. So we've had some problems in some of the cul-de-sacs with driveways, basically people effectively extending their driveways out into the cul-de-sacs. Using the cul-de-sac as an extension of their driveway. We've also had some problems where garbage trucks and or emergency vehicles have had trouble turning around in the cul-de-sacs because of vehicles parked along the side of the road. So rather than deal with it piecemeal, one or two as they come up, what I asked my highway department to put together a list of all of them that could be potentially problematic. And then we sent notices out to everybody. And we wanted to get feedback from the residents as to which ones they didn't think were problematic. And you know, I apologize, a couple people got angsty or upset because they thought we were shutting it all down. The reason I put them all in the most restrictive category is because we're going to be making the decisions, and we're not making the final decisions tonight, but this is again more for gathering input. But we wanted to make the decisions based on public input. And what I didn't want to have happen is, let's say that we looked at it and said, you know what, this one really just needs to be no overnight parking. And then 2 or 3 residents came in and said, I think this one should be overnight or should be no parking at all. And we switch it. And then somebody else who didn't come to the meeting because they were okay with it being no overnight parking came and said, well, wait a minute, I would have showed up if I knew you were going to make it no parking. So we put them all in the no parking list with the idea that it's easier to pull them out of that list and into either the no overnight parking or without putting them on any list at all, in which case they wouldn't have any parking restrictions on the side of the road. So that's why we did it the way we did. I probably should have explained this more thoroughly in the letter so as to prevent angst, but part of it also was, I was afraid if I explained that, then there would be people who felt strongly might not show up because they'd say, oh, it doesn't matter, you know, they'll move it out. So again, I apologize if there was any angst. I've been getting a lot of emails with people giving opinion, and I can see there's people obviously here tonight with additional opinion. Again, that's the purpose of this, is to gather this so that we can do this list appropriately based on what it's in. So again, I want to hear what you guys have to say. You know, one of the things I am going to ask, because a lot of people said, well, I don't think mine cul-de-sac should be restricted for parking because I need to have, you know, when people come over and visit, et cetera and so forth. And then I'll ask them, well, is there an issue with overnight parking? And they'll say, oh, no, that's not a problem. Because from a garbage truck standpoint, the times when they typically come through, not always, but they're usually there in the morning. And so if there's no overnight parking for most of the cul-de-sacs, that helps tremendously because when they get there, there won't be cars parked on the road or fewer cars parked on the road. Again, that's not always the case. It just is more common the case. But the other thing that does, like I said, if you've got a neighbor there who constantly uses the cul-de-sac as an extension of their driveway, that the no overnight parking takes care of that. That doesn't mean that you have to accept that. You know, I want your feedback, what you think. Again, so the three choices effectively are no parking, no overnight parking, or no restrictions. The one restriction that will always be there, because we put it in 2 weeks ago, is that you can't park on the grass. And that's where some of this came up. We had people who were parking on the center grassy areas of the cul-de-sacs. And if you actually read the way the laws used to read, it was a little gray. It was pretty clear to us that that wasn't the intent, that you could park there. But with the way the law was written, it was a little fuzzy, so we had clarified that. But anyway, I just wanted to get that out there so people understand what we're looking at, and I'm ready for yep, Craig, sorry.
Point of clarification, Craig Eckert, Deputy Town Supervisor. I didn't know if you wanted to also separate snow and ice operations from.
Yeah, so I will mention that this doesn't, no matter what we do, it doesn't affect the prohibition about on-street parking in the wintertime. That's true all through town. So in the winter, you can't have parking on the street because we wouldn't be able to plow. So this doesn't affect that. This is just during the normal, the other season besides winter. So who wants to go first? Go ahead. And so basically just say your name and which cul-de-sac, and then go ahead.
Hi, my name's Cassandra Jerome, and I am a resident of 44 Lovelace Lane. I've been a resident for the last 22 years in the town of Henrietta, or West Henrietta. I live in a very small circle, and we have a very big green cul-de-sacs, green space. So for people to park on the road, it makes it very hard. My children had to walk to the end of the street because the school bus could not get down there. Had I had a fire truck come to my house, they did come down the road, and they did help my son when he choked. But I feel that we should not have any restrictions. I feel that as a taxpayer, I care about my community and what things look like. I don't think anybody in my circle abuses the fact of overflow parking. If I have a family get together, I'm gonna have to need overflow parking somewhere. And if we don't park them around that circle, partly in the grass, we're gonna be in other people's front of their houses, and people are not gonna like that.
So you want to even park on the grass of the circle?
Not necessarily on the grass, but you have to go on a little bit on the side of the grass. I mean, ideally, if you shorten that grass area, it would be more feasible.
Tim, why don't you sit over here, Tim, because I'm probably going to be asking you a bunch of questions. Up in here? Yeah, at that mic. Do we know so does the cul-de-sac at Lovelace have curbs or gutters?
It's guttered, but there's no curbing in the center. It's just grassed.
So do we think we'd be able to do what you had talked about so one of the things we talked about is for some of them, it's not available for all of them, but for some of them where you have that thing with a narrow lane
Right.
and a big grass, we can actually put millings along the inside. So there could be, whether it's parking or if people are parking, the person going by could drive on that so that it allows the larger vehicles to bypass.
Right.
So it sounds like that might be an option to reduce the grassy area. And some people like that and some people don't. But it sounds like yours, it's got a big green area that.
It's a huge green area, and honestly, it doesn't really get mowed the way it should, so I don't know why you just wouldn't shorten it.
Okay.
It's actually a very large circle in circumference and across. It's just the point of when the garbage truck goes through. If there is somebody in the road turning that radius, the garbage truck will get on the grass. Lovelace isn't one that we have a lot of topsoil and repair issues with, I will say.
Okay. Go ahead. You can just join her.
That's my husband.
I assume.
Jerome.
And because you're in the same pod, you don't need a mask if you want to take it off to make it easier to speak.
Yeah.
I generally, because it doesn't get mowed the way it should or taken care of, I generally take care of that big green space in the middle. I mow it. If there's a rut in there, I generally will go out and rake it up and fix it to make sure that it looks the way it looks. And it's not because, I mean, I know you guys are taxed and you guys have a lot to do.
Sure.
So we just, as a group, we all take, Sue and Dom, who are here from Lovelace also, they help us with it too. So it's not like if we park on it, we also make sure that we take care of it.
Great. That is awesome.
The other thing, I'm sorry, the other thing too is, I raised two boys, 18 and 21, and the safety factor. So when I bought that home was because it was a cul-de-sac. It was, I love that whole idea. And now we have new neighbors that have young kids. And that's my biggest fear, is always making sure these cars are not in the way so you can see the child. Like just even when we came today, there was kids in the road riding their bikes like normal kids do. So you have to think of that too, of making sure that these cars aren't out in the road because we're worried about grass or something. I'm worried about children and their safety too.
And I've actually told, like if my sons have a friend come over, I've actually told them, park on the grass so we can see the kids. Because I don't want them blocking the corner of a driveway and the kid's coming around and they can't see them and they back into the kid because the kid's on a bike.
And when he says on the grass, it's on the edge of it. It's not
Yeah,
like in the
it's not
middle.
in the middle. It's off to the side so we can actually visualize and see the kids coming around the cul-de-sac and we're not hitting them.
Okay. That'd be
So you
horrible.
guys like to have the people park on the inside circle, not the outside of the circle?
Right, because it's too small. It's too narrow. That's, the school bus can't get through there
Right.
regularly without anything in the road.
Honestly, if they took that grass and shortened it and made it to just a third of the size it is, it would be perfect.
For it would be for safety, the buses,
Okay.
the ambulances and garbage
So would
trucks.
you guys prefer that the outside be no parking, but the inside be parking?
That's a tough one. Do we prefer the no parking on the outside, like in front of the houses, or parking on the inside?
No parking on roadway, parking on the shoulder that I created.
Right.
I think parking on the shoulder would be good. Around the circle, it makes sense. I mean, it's, I'm flexible. I mean,
Because I'm hearing you talk about that if people are parked on the outer, that it
They really can't. They really can't park on the outer. If they do, it
You're blocking
completely,
the mailbox or you're blocking the driveway.
yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
So my question is this for Mr. Lessing. If this is done, will emergency vehicles be able to get around that circle?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, so that's.
I
all.
think that sounds like a good solution. We'll take a look at that.
I also, I did go around in the town in the Lovelace Lane
circle?
and had everyone sign
That'd be
saying that
great.
they want, so I'd like to give that to you if that's okay.
Sure, that would be great.
Yeah.
You can give it to Craig behind you. No, Craig, just go ahead. There might be others. Well, you're going to pass around if they want. Yeah, that's fine. Okay,
All right, thank you.
and we had another couple here from Lovelace, is that correct?
Basically,
You got to walk up to the mic, just say your name and
my
that you're
name
from
is Donald
Lovelace.
Jim Vecchio. I live on 42 Lovelace Lane.
Right,
Okay. Basically, it's not an issue about you saying, parking cars there overnight. That doesn't really happen.
gotcha.
Okay. The only time a car gets parked on the circle or even on the side is, let's say you're getting, doing, something's going on your driveway. Maybe they're getting sealed or whatever.
That's the other thing I'll make a
Oh, you
point
have a
out.
little, you
Right,
have a party,
right,
people have to park somewhere.
right.
I mean, I've been there 50 years, never had an issue.
So for these
So I don't know
laws,
what,
I just want to make clear for these laws, if your driveway is being sealed, you're allowed to park even on your own lawn on stuff where this isn't draconian. We understand stuff like that. It's a graduation party. What we're trying to avoid are, where, especially like
I
some of the
understand what-
circles, it's a rental property and they have 10 cars every single day
that's not a
or every
problem over
single
there.
weekend.
Like I said, I've been there
Right.
50 years and it's.
Right, so I'm
hasn't
just
been an issue.
saying, even if we say no parking on the outside or whatever, if you guys your driveway is being sealed, you're never gonna get a ticket for that. If you do get a ticket to that, come see me, we'll get it thrown out.
Very good.
It's just, like I said, that's not the intent. The intent is to do more with what I'll call everyday parking. And again, in this
But
case, it sounds
that's
like
not a
what we're
case
gonna do
over
is
there.
we're gonna make it on the inside so that buses and garbage trucks can get around the outside even while there's vehicles parked there. It sounds like a great solution. Okay, thank you very
Very good,
much.
thank
We
you.
very much appreciate the input.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Craig.
Hi, I just want to go into the maintenance of the cul-de-sac. Can we make sure that we're not paying our contractor to mow that?
That's
So we'll
Mike.
mark that down.
That's one of the ones that the contractor's supposed to be doing?
Yes.
Okay.
So we do, just to explain that, if I may, we do pay a contractor to go out and mow these cul-de-sacs. They're supposed to do, is it twice a month? Every other week?
I'm not sure what the schedule is.
It depends on, it's more during growing season than later in the season. So if it's not getting done, if it gets long, do me a favor. I don't mind you still mowing it, but send us an email.
Yeah.
And we'll,
My guess is he's going out mowing it. The contractor's going out seeing it's mowed.
It's the same thing for the green belt.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if we probably do the green belt internal, but we can check on that as well.
I had to go out there and mow the green belt because it hasn't been mowed for, I don't know, maybe what, 2-3 weeks?
It's up past the heat.
I mean,
Yeah,
it
well,
was this high.
The green belt might be a
So-
little,
Lawnmower,
right. Well, and the
We've been
green belt
having a
might be a
few-
little different if it's wet. I know that, I don't want to get too much into,
No, but, that's okay.
I went there. It's okay.
Right. We want to understand this because we have been having some problems with our contractor. And, when it rained for, a week and a half straight, that made sense. But that week of 80-degree temperature, there was no water issues anymore. So the
So it's
fact
good
that it
you
wasn't.
know
in the
that
law.
we're aware of what's going on.
No,
but
I
do wanna
appreciate it.
I did want to check with the contractor on the cul-de-sac as much as anything.
No problem. Yeah.
I'm sorry. You're okay. Thank you.
Okay, so for the minutes, basically, they were saying that they had to go out and mow the green belt near there as well because the grass had gotten too long. So as I said, we've been having a few contractor issues for some of those that we sent out contractors instead. That's something we're taking a look at, changing the way we do that potentially for next year, because this is the second year in a row we've had some issues.
I will add that the grass got a little bit away from him, and Oaks asked me if he could use the roadside mower.
Right.
And the roadside is more of a priority, so I wouldn't release it right away.
Right.
But the grass had gotten so high that I don't think his mowers can handle it until he gets the flail on it.
So that's
That might
something we
be
ought to
the-
take a look at, that again, I'm sorry for sidetracking our public hearing, but maybe we take a look at getting a second to deal with some of these green belts. So, okay. If you wanted to add something, you just do us a favor and step up to the mic.
That's
Okay.
I don't have a problem mowing the center of the grass. So the contractor isn't liable for that. I don't have a problem mowing that because I
Okay.
mow anyways out front.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Do we have, I
what
see.
I wanted to say, I'm sorry.
Oh, come on up to the mic. No, don't say it from your seat because they can't hear
Basically,
it.
what I wanted to say is that's never been an issue, the green belt getting mowed. But just this past,
Yeah.
and
been having
I
some
don't
problems
think,
this
I
year.
don't think the green belt was saturated, because it was fine. Okay?
Yeah.
But it got to the point where
No,
you're
not the only
kids
ones.
couldn't even go out there so, but anyways.
No problem. You're not the only one who's been complaining about some of the cutting where the contractor's supposed to be. So we appreciate the feedback because that's how we know sometimes. As much as we can, we go out and see, but there's so many green belts all through town. There's no way we can check them all. Okay, do we have another person? Why don't we do this, Craig, while you're changing the thing, hold on a second. He's going to change while you're doing that, do we have someone online? We'll alternate back and forth to give you time.
I do not have anyone online, but I just wanted to remind the folks that are online that if they would like to speak during the public hearing, to go ahead and select the raise hand control if you're on Zoom on your computer or on the app. Oh, that was all I needed to do. I have somebody. Colleen would like to speak. Hang on just a minute. Let me unmute you.
Hey, all right. This is Patrick Warren. Thanks for having me. So the the not parking in the grass, that's kind of a new thing for us. There wasn't a notice for that. I'm curious if there was going to be, or what the rules are for that.
We're on Navajo Circle.
We're on Navajo Circle, by the way.
Which one?
Navajo.
Navajo? Okay.
Yep.
The problem with the parking on the grass is we then have to repair it. We've had a lot of problems with that. And again, that's actually always been the rule. It's just not always been well enforced. And part of that is because the sheriffs couldn't, if there's not a specific, it makes it tougher to write a ticket if there's not a specific section or subsection that they can quote. But that's actually always been the rule. It just wasn't always enforced.
It was my understanding too, that we're not going out looking necessarily to enforce this rule, but rather if it became a serious issue, that we had a tool to be able to use.
Yes, right. So there are a couple places where it is clearly being abused. We have a couple people with large trucks that are constantly parking there and we're running it. And again, when we asked the sheriff to go ticket them, they basically said, well, we don't have it's not, again, you kind of had to read two different sections of code to see that it was illegal. So we just put it in one place where it was crystal clear so that they could cite that. So again, it has always been illegal, but like with all this stuff, we don't sit and go around looking for stuff, nor does the sheriff, unless it becomes a problem. But with that said, let's take a look at, is there something, so I guess my question is, why do you guys park on the grass and not Navajo Circle? Is it similar to the scenario with the cul-de-sac on Lovelace Lane where it's safer to park in the center than it is around the outside perimeter?
It's not primarily us. I have had a visitor park there where it didn't make sense to park in the driveway due to just timing and scheduling. Having options to park around the circle or where it's safe also makes sense. I guess we didn't know that it was illegal necessarily. So that was a question. And had you guys, you clarified it recently or established it or firmed it up recently, I guess having notification of that would have been a nice thing to have mailed to.
Right. The thing is, so again, we do send out the public notices to send them out to, so it's also center medians. I don't know that we had the budget for that much postage. I understand what you're saying. It's, again, it didn't change what was or was not illegal. It just clarified it. So to have sent that out to everybody whose house is next to a grassy median would have just been a huge list. So
yeah, taxes would have taken a hit. I get it. So no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Navajo, is that one that's curbed or guttered?
No, it's guttered on the outside, but on the inside of the circle, it's just grassed. And that is one of the ones that we constantly have to topsoil around the outside because of the garbage trucks. That one, Pueblo and Chieftain.
Oh, and this is one of the ones that, in fact, I think this was the one we were talking about, the mailbox. I have another question for you because we were thinking about from a snow removal standpoint, the mailboxes where they are located at the grassy area, they present a headache for snow removal. If we approached the postmaster and had him move it to the right-hand entrance, so if you consider the entrance road coming into the circle to be 6 o'clock, it would be about 4 o'clock. Now, obviously, it would shift based on where the nearest driveway is. But the idea is, as I'm driving into the circle, I would pull up to the right, get to my mailbox, and then go into the circle instead of having the mailboxes in the center of the circle, which is where we put the snow. It makes it a real problem for, if there is heavy snow. I'm just wondering if that's something that you guys would be good with. Since
I am totally fine with it. I mean, if you're leaving to go to work or run out on an errand, grab it then, or when you're coming back, just grab it then. Honestly, I think it's better on the way in or out than it is in where it is now.
Right. Okay, I appreciate that, because like I said, ultimately, it's up to the postmaster, not to us, but hopefully they will acquiesce to our request. And basically, the town would put in a new post. We'd move all the existing mailboxes, but if the postmaster okays it. But I just wanted to check with, because again, yours was one of the, Navajo was actually the exact circle that Tim and I were looking at when we were talking.
Oh, no. I mean, obviously, I don't speak for everyone in the cul-de-sac, but
Right.
for me, mail is not a problem. So, yeah.
And some people have to drive around. So it seems
It's
like it
fine.
would be easier to just have it to the one side.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
And so Tim, this was one that we were talking about doing, again, also narrowing down the center area. But in this one, it looks like the parking is, I guess my question is, you know, at that point, same thing, if you could check with your neighbors as to whether they'd want parking around the inner diameter and leave the outside for no parking so that the trucks and vehicles could go by. The advantage of that is the wider the radius, the easier it is for the garbage trucks and the buses. So if you parked on the inside, then the other advantage to that too is you're not having to worry about blocking driveways and such if you're parking on the inside.
So yeah, we can check on that. Do we know when we'll be meeting on this again? So we could have them join if they have something to say.
They can, so it would be 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
It would be June 9th. But the other option is they can send an email to supervisor@henrietta.org.
Got it. Perfect.
I basically get it out to the clerks and the town board so that everybody sees it, but that all of those will be essentially entered on the record for input. So anybody who's listening to this broadcast, if you want to add comments, by all means, send me an email, supervisor@henrietta.org, and just let us know what you think about for your street. But yeah, if you know, the people who are here can check with their neighbors. Now I know you guys already did the one survey, but you know, like I said, if what we're proposing and they all love that, we'll work on doing that. Because again, the goal is to make it as safe as possible all around without creating a large adverse impact to the residents, right? And so we're trying to find the best solution for each of these circles. And for some of them, again, you know, we don't always have control, especially the older neighborhoods, how they were built. Some of them were built logically, some of them were not. And so, you know, we kind of have to deal with some of these old sins, and we're just trying to clean some of them up. But like I said, I think that Tim's suggestion for that inner parking area, shoulder,
Yeah, it'd be
makes a lot of
millions.
sense, so.
It would not be blacktop. I want to clarify that.
Right.
I mean, it's crushed up blacktop. It looks like stone, but it's black in color, and we would roll it, and it would eventually be pretty smooth and very solid.
Right.
And we would put it a foot thick, and we wouldn't have a lot of damage on the center of the circles at all.
Right. Okay. So we had a person in the audience. Come on up.
Hello, I'm Karen O'Connor, and I'm here on behalf of my parents, Gordon and Patricia Cochran, who live on Pueblo Circle. And since you brought up the snow plowing, I'll say that I did have to send a photograph of the snow in front of the mailbox because twice I called and snow was left there. My parents will be 87 years old in August and October, and they cannot climb over snow.
Karen, what was the address of your parents again? What was it?
81 Pueblo Circle.
Thanks.
But anyway, before they mentioned that, I wasn't going to mention it. I was just
No
here to get some clarification on the letter. Again, my parents are elderly and they don't understand when they get this kind of mailing. Their
Sure.
concern was that their 5 children and 9 grandchildren couldn't be there at the same time because they'd have to
right.
park down Tomahawk Trail or around Gatehouse Trail. So that clarified their concern, I think.
Okay, so, you know, one of the things, again, in looking at these, and I think all these are in that same boat, right? Navajo.
Yeah,
Pueblo.
it's down Tomahawk
Very
Trail.
similar in size in
Yeah.
that neighborhood.
So,
But they don't really, I don't think that any restriction is needed on Pueblo Circle. 3 of the 5 homes, I think my parents are the youngest of 3 of the 5 homes that are there.
Right, the issue is that they're not, again, from law standpoint, it sticks around even after those tenants
Right.
leave. So
I
we
think the
can-
bigger problem isn't so much the garbage trucks as snowplows that are digging up the inner portion. Couple of the cars have parked in the middle, but it's never an issue. It doesn't get mowed. So the cars kind of mat it down anyway.
And do you think your parents would prefer the mailboxes on the way in? So they would be on the right-hand side on the way,
They
just
do-
as you come into the circle?
They don't drive, I get the mail.
Oh,
But if they're not, if I get it when I'm driving, they get it if they're walking. And that's why we can't have them walking in the wintertime down the driveway over the snow in the gutters and.
so is
So
the snow in front of their driveway or in front of the mailboxes?
The mailboxes.
Yeah, see, this is part of the problem. And
Yeah,
then if you
because
try
the
to get in
mailboxes are
there.
right at the end of the straightaway
Exactly.
It's
in.
where we store the snow.
And
Right.
and if the mailbox were, or if the plow were to try to scrape the snow away from the mailbox, they would take the mailbox with it, which is why we hate the mailboxes where they are.
Right. But most people, now my parents' home is to the left in the cul-de-sac, so we don't go all the way around the right way that we're supposed to drive.
Yep.
We kind of cut across.
Yeah, well, that'd be perfect. If you're going in, you could stop, pick up the mail, swing around, give it to them. So,
Yeah, I don't think the location of the mailbox, could they ever be with their postal or with their newspaper mailboxes?
I don't
At the
even know where
bottom-
those are.
Bottom of their driveways.
We can ask the postmaster that they put them on individual.
Yeah.
Because again, we push the snow to the center of the circle, not out to the yards, to
Right.
the houses.
Right. When I did call about the snow removal and had to send a photograph, they did send somebody right away with a small
Thank you.
plow. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I drove over to make sure because
Yeah, usually
they'll go get it.
I mean, they'll even, I've seen them go in with the loader because then that they can more accurately essentially reach in, pull the snow out.
Right.
Than to try to hit it with a plow
I
sometimes.
spoke to the driver too about how
Right.
he was doing it and modified how he
Right.
was doing it, but it's still very difficult.
It's very
when you're
difficult.
Trying to do it with the wing.
Right.
In a sense, he's got to turn around again and now get it with
Yeah.
the nose of his plow and pull it somewhere else.
Yeah.
But that wasn't my concern coming here. It was just to clarify
No
that
problem.
my
No, well,
family
again,
can
while
visit
you're
my
here, we might
parents.
as well cover all issues. So, yeah, we'll take a look at that. I'll ask them too. Again, either whether they I have a feeling they don't want to make more stops for their mail postal carrier.
Even if they put them around in the middle, the opposite straight across, like on the south end of the cul-de-sac instead of the
Still
north
poses
end.
a problem for snow removal.
Does
Yeah, again,
does
it
it?
works
Oh.
better if it's on the outer ring because we push the snow to the inside.
Mhm. Okay,
So, okay,
okay, thank you.
thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Somebody online?
Yes, I have Mark here with his hand raised.
Yes, this is Mark Kress. I live at 109 Chieftain Circle.
Yep.
And yeah, about the mailboxes being moved, yeah, I think that would be gravely helpful because, yeah, ours is on the inner circle and it does get hard to get to the mail sometimes. I mean, I know they do their best to plow it. It's not I think the circumference of our circle is probably okay for parking on the inside. And as we've sent in our emails that we'd be fine with no overnight parking. There's really not anybody here on Chieftain Circle that abuses
Right.
parking or parking in the circle or parking overnight or anything like that. No big vehicles.
Okay. And would you guys be okay with the shoulder on the inside too, just to give a little bit additional room?
Yes, that'd be fine.
Okay. Great. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any, Kevin, were you here for this or something else? Either if it's now, come up and speak to the mic, otherwise.
It has nothing to do with the proposed law and parking on it has more to do with the green belt that was discussed earlier and contractors mowing it. So I'll save it to the comment period at the end.
Okay, great, thank you. Somebody else online, Becky?
Those are all the raised hands that I have.
Okay, and as I mentioned, we've probably gotten a dozen letters. I've been when I reply to them, I've been including the town board. Is there anyone out there, Craig? No one else outside? Okay. No, that's fine. So, like I said, we're not going to be making a decision on this tonight. We're going to be getting additional feedback, and Tim and I will be working on putting together a list of what we're looking to do. And again, if you want to provide any additional input or you want to see the stuff as we're doing it, by all means, send me an email at supervisor@henrietta.org and I'll keep you in touch with what we're doing. And what we'll probably do, I'm probably going to close the hearing now, because when we draft the new one, we'll do another notice. I don't know how long it's going to take us to get through each of these and go through all the different emails to figure out what's the best route for each of the different circles. But the gist of it is that most circles, folks, they do not wish to have or they don't have an issue with the no overnight parking, because they don't. Again, it's more, I've got, a physical therapist coming over, I've got company coming over, whether it's grandkids or others, and whereas there are a number of these that do have problems, like you said, the school buses can't get through, the garbage trucks have trouble going through, and they maul the lawn. With some of that, the impact from being no parking to them outweighs the problem of the school buses not being able to get through the circle. If we can come up with a solution like Tim has put forth that can get us both of those, all the better, right? Because that's ultimately our goal, is to keep it safe, allow the access, get the school buses through, and not impact the residents. So that's our ultimate goal here. Some of them, again, there's these ones that are the circles with the grassy medians. There's some of these other ones that are shaped kind of like home plate with no center median. There's, you name it, they've built it just about. There's these weird hammerheads in Riverton that kind of look like a shortened Y. I don't know. I sometimes wonder what some of these developers were thinking when they put these things together. The cul-de-sacs, I get it. Love, why you want to be on a cul-de-sac. No through traffic is great. As someone grew up playing in the street, we weren't on a cul-de-sac, but we were not on a through street either. It was a loop around. So you didn't get anywhere by coming on our street. Only people who wanted to visit our street came on our street. It was great as a kid. So I get it. And you know everybody on the street. And so, although if you were a troubled teenager, that's not always a good thing. I'm saying that for a friend. So, okay, thank you again for everybody who came in for this. Very much appreciate it. And like I said, I like where we're getting with those circles. And so as we'll get that plan back out to you guys and share it. So again, if you haven't sent me an email at supervisor, do so, and I can get you that as we develop it. Thank you. And thank you, Tim, for coming in, being here and answering our questions. Very much appreciate it. Love the ideas. Okay, so as I said, hearing no further opinions on the proposed local law, I am going to close the public hearing, and when we have the new draft ready to go, we will call for a new public hearing. So that public hearing is closed. Next up, I have the continuation of the public hearing for the special use permit application number 2021-034, the Fairways at Riverton, Parcel A, to construct 85 single-family homes and 90 single-story. Hold on before you guys go up there. Craig, did you have to change?
Did I?
You might have already, did you change it after Kevin or no? Okay, yeah, we better change it then. Sorry, finish. To construct 85 single-family homes and 90 single-story 2-unit townhouses. So come on up and introduce yourself. Greg will get the easel for you. Yep.
You're good. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Walt Baker with DSB Engineers. With me tonight is Mr. Richard Battisti. He's the president of Faber Homes and representing Forest Creek Equity, which Forest Creek Equity is the owner of the parcel, which is 55 acres on Erie Station Road and Scottsville West Henrietta Road on the east side. It's adjacent to the golf course. As the supervisor mentioned, this is a continuation for a special use permit and a seeker determination. We were in front of the board 2 weeks ago, and there was a couple of comments that we had to get some answers and get back to the board on. One of them was the revised environmental assessment form, which is referred to as an EAF, a long form. We've submitted that, and that's the board should have gotten it. The traffic study, which I believe the town already had, and they were going to share it with the rest of the town board members. And also we submitted a letter. We had Environmental Resources, which is a consultant that we use regarding environmental issues. And there's a question about a bald eagle, which actually resides somewhere along the Genesee River and north of the Thruway. But it was a concern whether or not it has any impact on this parcel. So we've submitted that to the town as well. So you should have that, I hope. And I believe those are the 3 items we talked about. Again, as the supervisor mentioned, we're looking at doing single-family homes and also 2-unit, referred to as a multi-home, which is like a townhouse attached 2-unit townhouse, which would be single-story. And the single-family lots will be available for either a ranch-style house or a 2-story house. Board has any questions?
So a couple other updates on the plan. Do you want to just touch on the updates on the sidewalks?
Yes, we did. Actually, we had a meeting with the staff this past Monday, and a question came up about including sidewalks. I should probably.
Could you do me a favor if you're going to stand over there? There's a hand mic there.
As I mentioned, I turned the map so north would be pointing up. The New York State Thruway is along through this area. We have right away for the Thruway. The Genesee River is over here. And as Supervisor mentioned, we had a discussion with the town and the staff regarding providing sidewalks. We're going to have sidewalks throughout the project on both sides of the street and also streetlights. During the conversation we had with the supervisor and the staff on Monday, they asked us if we'd put sidewalks from, obviously this is Scottsville West Henrietta Road, and it comes up and it turns, and then it turns to the east, and Erie Station Road begins there and goes on up. And then there's another street here by the name of Countess.
Correct.
And the question was, would we be providing sidewalks from Countess on our side of the road, on our side of the right of way, down to approximately where the pump station is. There's a pump station on the far side of the street, and the town has plans to extend, what would you refer to?
That was a crosswalk. So basically, we're still waiting to hear back from the New York State DOT. So it could be short of there, depending on, we asked the New York State DOT where they thought it was the safest point to put a crosswalk. where basically the best visible sight lines. Our initial estimation was around the location of the town's pump station property. That's basically, we want to get it to that crosswalk. So the idea is if the people here want to collect and walk out, for instance, to Breeze Park, this would provide them the ability to get down. And this would be a side, it doesn't need to be concrete. It can be a asphalt paved, but we wanted it separated from the road because the traffic there is 55 plus. And I'm not talking about that it's seniors. So, you know, it's, they agreed to put that in. And, you know, that will basically provide a safer pedestrian and cycling. You know, again, if people want to get to Breeze Park, if they want to get down to where the golf course is, or over to the Riverton, the rest of the Riverton facilities, to Scottsville, West Henrietta Road is where the drugstore is. There's the tennis courts off of there as well. So it just provides, you know, we just didn't think that, especially if it's younger kids, that we didn't want them on the shoulders of New York State Route 253. So this would provide them a means to continue down and get over to those other locations. So from a safety standpoint, that was very much appreciated. If you remember from the last time, we were also, the town currently has property that runs through the middle of this. It's part of the park that includes the golf course. And what we had proposed to the developer is to swap out that chunk of acreage for a strip along the western side of his property, which is the eastern side of the golf course. Because under the local waterfront revitalization plan, we're bringing a river walk down, and there are portions of the river walk that between the golf course and the steepness of the bank, there is no safe place to put that trail. So what we would do is we would bring it out to the eastern edge of the golf course, down this edge, and then it would cross over at that same location that we were talking about, continue on the eastern side of 253 down to Breeze Park and pick up back at the river at Breeze Park. So this is a way for us to, again, get past the portions where you can't walk along the river without risk of being hit by a golf ball or falling down the embankment, and also get past the bridge that's crosses the Genesee at 253. So basically what we've done is we proposed to the developer, and he agreed to it, was that we essentially swap the acreage of that portion through the center with the acreage along the side of the golf course. The other reason why we wanted these this connector sidewalk is part of what that was for is for people from the rest of Riverton to get to the park. That's what that original access way was for.
Okay.
If we're getting rid of it, those people coming out of Countess now need to get over to the rest of the park. And we could, I guess, in theory, steer them up through the neighborhood. But it made more sense to us to bring them along the edge of the road to get to the again, both the Riverwalk Trail, the golf course, and anything else that goes in over there. So that was where all that comes from. So again, thank you very much to Mr. Iacovangelo and the whole team and their willingness to work and make this make it work out to build basically a safer pedestrian and cycling community, because that's one of the things that is very big in this Riverton, you know. And so again, if you remember, our goal from this special permit is to talk about whether this development matches the original intent of the Riverton. And they certainly are there in terms of density and green space. They are there in terms of the housing types. And now with these changes, in my opinion, they're there in terms of the characteristic of having safe pedestrian and cycling access and interconnect between the different communities. So again, thank you very much for their willingness to make these changes for the betterment of the community.
All right, we'll coordinate with you and New York State DOT as far as we could extend the sidewalk to wherever they feel is the best location.
Right, and we're going to basically pick it up from the other side.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, so they have, the trail system will come down. So basically this side will have a sidewalk. There'll be a sidewalk along Scottsville and Erie Station, and then sidewalks on both sides of the street throughout the project. So it should be pedestrian friendly.
Sounds good. Any questions?
Well, I very much like the idea of the sidewalk there. That's a great idea. But I'm going back to the concerns I had last week and then at the planning board that if the original permit you had for the clearing was violated or not. It appears to me that those trees did not fall over. You know, when the root balls are upside down, it doesn't appear that they fell over like was stated at the last meeting. So that's one of my concerns. Yes, we did get a copy of that letter from your environmental resource people that it wouldn't have any effect on the eagles because of the current site conditions. Well, that's because all the trees were ripped down. So the current site conditions, the eagles wouldn't be, it wouldn't be harmed or so because there's no trees there for them. So
Right.
That's a comment I have on that. Another issue I have is the traffic that goes through there. 55 miles an hour. I sat out there a week ago or so during rush hour and quite busy. Saw the cars coming off Countess. Within a second, somebody was right on their back end. I can't imagine another 89 cars trying to pull out of there every day from on the other side, on the other lane. So, and then the last thing I have is that you submitted a letter from, it was from 2011 from the Department of Army out of Buffalo District, the Corps of Engineers. And this talks about the wetlands also. And it basically doesn't warrant a revision for the wetlands, but it was only good for 5 years. So it looks like it's supposed to be reviewed again within 5 years. Once again, that letter was sent in 2011. So it looks like it's about 5 years overdue. I don't know for a fact on that, but how that all works. But if that's the case, I think maybe we should call them again and have them check it out.
Well, regarding that, if you look at it, they remember I mentioned last time, the areas through the center, which was the part you were concerned about, that was deemed non-jurisdictional. The parts that they're saying has to be looked at again in 5 years is the strip that's up towards that northwest corner. The portions that were ID'd as going through, which I think the supervisor called them pocket wetlands, they were determined as being non-jurisdictional.
Actually, I was told there were no wetlands, but I still see that there are wetlands, and on this EAF, they refer to the state wetlands and where there are.
Rob, they're not, because they're non-jurisdictional, they're not marked, they're not designated on the Monroe County GIS. So again, there's a difference between areas that are wetlands and areas that are jurisdictional that you have to mitigate with regards to. So on the Monroe County site and the New York State site, there were none that were jurisdictional in that portion. If you look in the upper left where the green kind of sticks out to the left, but they're not doing any development over there.
Well, the one I have, I'm not sure exactly what this is considered here.
Riverina.
the
Chris Martin, if you're on, there's Mike Stafford has a environmental resource mapper here that basically it just shows it's labeled riverine. I don't know what that means.
I looked at the mapper.
Yeah, I mean,
I looked at,
yeah, we certainly have to take a look at it, but the wetland maps that we have that are from the Army Corps of Engineers and the New York State DEC only show a wetland up near the northwest corner of the site. And that's typically what we use. Well, we can certainly take a look at it. We know we're not going to take any action tonight. You know, certainly if there are concerns, we can take a look at them.
So
there are concerns about that. I don't know how to really demise if that's there or not, but everything I looked at showed that it was there, but
that on the
they didn't
golf
make a
course?
big deal about it.
Rob, isn't that on the golf course? It's labeled Riverton Golf Club.
the view that I was looking at, I believe.
That's a creek.
I believe that was in the area.
It mentions a tributary.
I thought.
Chris, do you think, given the age of the delineation, that a redelineation or reassessment in that area is merited?
I mean, you know, wetlands do kind of grow and ebb over time. You know, I'd have to talk to, certainly I'd want to talk to the DEC and the state on that one, just to see what their opinions are. But, you know, if the map shows that there's a wetlands there, typically there's something there. The size of it may change, but usually the location doesn't. But I'd like to take a look at the wetland mapper and see what, you know, the council members have. You know, we could take a look at it or discuss it with the DEC to see if there was something there or not there, and what their opinion is.
That
Would it be beneficial? Would it be beneficial if I came into the meeting room?
Sure.
To the what?
All right, I'll be there in a minute.
Coming in
Oh,
here.
okay. Oh, okay.
So I can show him this map.
While we're waiting on him, I just, once again, want to bring up the original permit from a year ago that you said they could clear the land. Wasn't supposed to disturb the soil, and it was disturbed. I mean, you can see the big ruts, the big, where root balls were brought up.
Hi, I'm Richard Battisti with Faber Builders and Forest Creek Equity. I was there when they cleared the trees. I reiterate, we did not violate the permit. We actually walked it with Chris and Craig during and after the clearing. Again, those root balls you see on the ground were trees that fell over, and they may have gotten turned over because they had to get cut up once they fell down, but we did not disturb any soil on this, at least not on purpose.
Well, on purpose or not on purpose, there's ruts there, and it was disturbed. It appears to me it was disturbed.
Really looks terrible up there. It was like a war zone. I mean, I don't know how that land just got cleared like that. It's terrible.
only wetland that we see is there's a pocket wetland. I'm sorry, Chris Martin, Director of Engineering and Planning. The only wetland that we see that's particularly on the site is at the northwest corner where it butts up against the expressway, or throughway rather, which is a federal wetland. But the other one shows it more on the other federal wetlands are located within the golf course that we own.
There are 6 of them that are within the golf course itself. The little riverine line, that's essentially, like a creek. The water, if you look at it, it looks like it's from an elevation, it's a creek. So again, they would just have to deal with that from a grading standpoint to make sure that the water sheds in that direction. But that's not it's not a protected wetland.
That's one up as a wetland in our federal one, or our map that we use.
So if I'm using the GIS from the county and using that map, will it show up there?
Sure, and it should. And ours usually compare with theirs. So if you have to turn on the parcel base though, so you can see exactly where it is. I'd be more than happy to share this with you if you want to see it.
If I could see it on the GIS for the county also, it would clear up some things for me also. I did call down there and looked on there. They don't have a system that you can put in the tax ID to kind of find that. They said in a couple of days they will have that there, so we can put in, well, this is what I was told. But I'm not clear on if there's wetlands there or not, to be quite honest about it. I would like some clarification on that.
And what's this part within, it has to be, within 5 years if it's not developed?
Yeah, that letter is a little concerning also.
I'd just like to know where we stand on that.
Why don't you sit at that spot there? So you can
Councilman
answer.
Stafford, can you reference the 5-year for me? Can you direct me to that?
That was sent to Jim LaChase back, and I received it within my packet.
Is that in the
I
special
can show
permit?
it to you.
I believe it's in the EAF,
Yeah, it was in the EAF.
the updated EAF,
Right, that, again,
Uh,
that,
page
That's-
16.
right, that's referring to the area that Chris was just talking about that's already been delineated, and they're saying that is a wetland, and that's going to be valid for 5 years, and if you were going to disturb that wetland, you need to redefine it or relook at it after 5 years. The areas that were in the center of the site were non-jurisdictional, and they were discounted by the Army Corps, so.
So you're now saying that that is a wetland on the land?
The piece up in the finger, yes, up in that piece up along the lake.
It's not being disturbed. It's
Of the
the
river.
portion that's not being disturbed.
Right, we're not disturbing it, right. And that's the area that they're saying that is jurisdictional. So that jurisdictional one is valid for 5 years. And like Chris mentioned, if it does grow, which they generally do, they want in 5 years, if you were planning on working in that area, you would need to have it redelineated. But the areas that were discounted in this letter as being non-jurisdictional were in the center.
So Rob, I have the wetlands
So you don't
layer
have to
on.
relook at it in 5 years because it was non-jurisdictional.
I have the Monroe County GIS mapping with the hydrography layers on showing the New York wetlands, the DEC wetlands, or the national, wetlands, and the state designated wetlands. And again, all of the wetlands, there's the one that's in the upper corner where they're not disturbing. All the other wetlands are on the golf course. So there's this one. That's the one they're talking about, that if they were to come near here, they would have to redefine it because the definitions are out of date. Those have expired. But because they're not disturbing it, they don't have to redefine it. Now, if we look to put our trail in there, we would have to go through, because if our trail's coming right along here, we're within that, 100-foot buffer?
Not for the federal. That's a
Yeah,
state.
that's only for a New York State DEC wetland.
Okay.
If it's a federal, there's no 100-foot buffer.
Okay, but we're going right by the edge, so we might have to, when we do the local waterfront revitalization plan, we may have to redefine that. But we would come along here, so you can see that's a wetland. That's basically all the ponds are wetlands. And then there's nothing else over there. So that thing that they talked about, that it may very well be this riverine thing. They said that that is not jurisdictional, so it's not on here.
Where-
It didn't,
I
it did
missed
not
that part. Where
require,
does it say that?
Where does it say what?
That it's not jurisdictional.
I think it's on page 2 of that cover letter that was sent,
Okay.
the Army Corps letter. Let's see.
Turn
Yeah,
on stream,
first
just in case it
paragraph.
was a stream, but it doesn't show up. So like I said, these are all there, and if you
Right, the first paragraph and page
look,
2.
you'll see.
There's no clear surface water connection, which I mentioned last week. If there's no clear surface water connection,
That's
they
the one lot.
generally consider it non-jurisdictional, and that's
This
what
is
they,
the other lot.
they wanted to say. Therefore,
But we are going to be giving them.
the waters are considered isolated, non-navigable, intrastate waters, and not regulated under this section. So they're not regulated. So therefore, they're not wetlands.
Well, it appears that from what I have here, and this is why I'm asking the question, it appears that it connects to that pond. To the, I'm not saying the pond is.
No, so basically what you're looking at is, all that is saying is, that is that drainage, and you can see it on the map if you turn on the satellite imagery.
Oh, it's the drainage swale feeding that pond on the golf course?
Correct, it's a drainage swale feeding that pond.
Right.
So the thing being, with all their, when they do the grading, we'll just have the planning board, and we can put that right in as a condition on this, that we ask the planning board to pay attention to the grading, to make sure that the watershed that was, to go to that pond goes to the pond, or whatever, something like that. We'll have to figure out how to word that, but if you look at the imagery, I mean, you can see it in the imagery, sort of the swale leading up to it. So it looks like it was a swale that fed that pond. And again, the thing I will note, it's funny, those ponds are now designated wetlands, but let's be honest, they were built for this golf course, right? These wetlands that's feeding.
Yeah, we're man-made.
It's a man-made water trap for the golf course. So that's what we're talking about here. Now, with that said, with the water table underneath, these things do feed into the river, and, so again, we want to protect them, and that's why they're on here as protected wetlands, because any pollution that flows into those ponds will make its way into the river. But in terms of that non-jurisdictional thing, to me, it looks like you can basically see it on here. Again, it's labeled riverine. But if you look at the imagery, and I don't know if I also have, I do have topography. And you can see from the topography, there's a hill to the northwest, and there's a hill to the southeast, and this is a swale that runs right into that pond. So basically, we want to just make sure that the grading doesn't take all the water. In other words, when you're washing your storm water, that the water still flows into those ponds to keep them fed.
We'll be building on-site water quality ponds. Obviously, we work with Chris all the time, and we provide the ponds, so it's part of our permitting.
No, I understand. It's not us. It's when you're working with a planning board, in other words, we would just, as part of our seeker determination, just point out that it's important that the drainage for that area essentially doesn't starve the ponds. We don't want to starve the wetlands, because it's pretty clear when you look at the existing drainage that this area here all drains into that pond.
Yeah, we'll definitely follow that drainage pattern.
Right, that's all.
We try not to change the natural topography.
No, understood. My point is, if they're concerned about that, we can put that as a condition that the planning board reviews the drainage plans to make sure that it keeps the ponds fed. Okay. What else?
Those were my concerns, and traffic is still a huge concern no matter what. I mean, so
Yeah.
So
I'd say,
from a traffic standpoint, what would you want them to do?
Well, one of the things in the letter from Barton and Gudis, they mentioned that the new developments that are going in should be taken into account. in
And
the
they
traffic
did
study.
do that. That's what we asked them to update.
Okay.
Do we have the Terry opine on the updates, Chris?
No,
Or
right
are they
now,
not in yet?
right now, SRF and Associates is making the updates to the traffic report based on the traffic from parcel E. My guess is they'll probably have in a couple weeks. When we get it, we'll give it to our consultant to review.
Right.
Okay.
So we can't complete the seeker process until that's done.
Okay.
Do we have an engineering or wetland consultant that can give us a definitive opinion on the wetlands?
We don't, but we can find one.
Because it sounds like that's a concern and we need,
Does Waltz and Jane's firm do that? I just say that because we have them on as
BDR, so
professional,
they
BDR.
They probably have one in their Rochester office. We could certainly reach out to them.
Because we have them on as, what do you call it, professional services.
would the
Professional
DEC,
services.
would the DEC or the Department of the Army and the Corps of Engineers do it?
They could, the only problem is it takes a longer time.
Okay.
So typically you're better off trying to get a consultant to try to do that. And they have to run it by the DEC anyway. If there's any weapon permits that have to be obtained.
Right. Any other things that we want them to address prior? 'Cause I don't want to see us say, okay, we only need these two things, and then they come back in however long, and then we say, oh, here's two more things. So obviously, if it's something new that arises, that's something else. But if it's something you know now, get it out on the table. And that's going to go for when we open it up to the public as well. We have the stuff that's already been raised.
Nope,
Got anything else, Rob?
No.
I guess again, from the traffic, we are going to be taking that stuff into account. The issue we have here is the issue we've had with a number of things, that this is a state road, and it's the state DOT who determines whether they need a traffic light or stop signs or change in speed limits or anything like that. We don't get to dictate that. So ultimately, it's their opinion as to whether any traffic issues, whether there are any significant adverse traffic issues remaining.
Can we make a request for them to a suggestion?
We can. I will tell you that I don't have good hopes based off of past history, but we can absolutely make that
Yeah,
request.
it's just-
What were you thinking, speed limit or?
Well, the speed is, they're not following the speed limit there.
Right.
If I'm hitting that curve and I'm getting somewhere, I'm trying to get by, I'm probably going faster than what I need to also. But it's very dangerous to get out of there. It would be nice if a light was there. Maybe I'm reaching, but
the one thing
even with the line of sight, if someone's coming around, by the time you get out there, it may be too late.
Right, so a couple of things on that. The one thing the state did say is that they needed to cut some of the foliage back to create greater sight lines. I will also note that the presence of the sidewalk will actually do that on the western side. The other thing I will note, I wasn't going to have them carry the sidewalk north past Countess because there are no residential properties over there. As in our discussions, I don't know what the thruway's doing with their changes to going to tollless, or not tollless, but toll boothless. It's possible someday they could open up those service stations so that people could drive into them from the other side. If it ever gets that way and people can walk there and they want to develop that and put an entrance off of the road, I would put the burden of sidewalk on them to continue the sidewalk to their facility. But today, as there is no, I'll call it pedestrian use over there, I did not see it did not deem fair to me to put that burden on this developer, especially since he's putting in a long sidewalk, because it's again, the vast majority of their street frontage. So I just wanted to make that clear in case someone said, well, why didn't the sidewalk continue north on that side? Because again, there is no other residential over there. There's an RG&E facility. There's the service entrance for the service station. That's it. Anything else?
And with all those houses, with all the individual properties there, you know, you really think that in the morning only, what number did I have here? 57. It looks like 89 cars pulling out of there with all those, that's all they estimate? for
That's
people
actually a
leaving
lot,
during peak
believe it or
hours?
not.
Considering the number of people that work from home now, it's a lot.
Right.
Today they.
And not even without that, Mike, that's a lot looking at, I don't know, that's higher than the other developments we've seen. Because again, it's during peak time. So it's not just that 89 people are leaving, it's 89 people are leaving during peak time. If somebody goes to work at 10 or at 6, they're not in that peak time. And that is based off of say it again?
ITE, which stands for Interstate Transportation Engineers. Is that true, Walt?
Correct.
I was kind of making that up as I went along. It sounded good.
So it's compiled from national data. They basically look at real things. They do counts, they get standard, and they have it, it's based off of, is it a senior community? Is it a student community? Is it a general community? Is it houses? Is it townhouses? Is it apartments? It's all broken out like that, and they basically, that's what the traffic consultant is doing, is basically finding the best match for that, and it'll say, it's going to generate, 2.3 trips. No, it's not typically per house. It's going to probably be more the other way. 1 trip for every,
Per hour.
Right. So, and they break it down in terms of, what's interesting is I've looked at some of these other ones. It seems to me the return peak time is actually more common than the departure peak time. That there's typically more traffic returning on the peak times than depart. I don't know what that means in terms of people's habits, but they all want to be home for dinner, I guess.
And a traffic study, we actually send a crew out there in the morning between 7 and 9, which is considered the peak time, and then in the evening between 4 and 6. They count the existing traffic going by, and so use that as the background traffic, plus, like you mentioned, the ITE as far as what the future traffic's going to be.
And for background, they did adjust it for COVID, correct?
True, correct, right. And other developments in the area.
So, now, like I said, that change for including parcel E wasn't originally in there. They are adding that. They are going to give us the new numbers, so we'll take a look at. And basically, to answer your question about what New York State is most likely to answer, if the traffic warrants it, we will put the light in. So they will, if we see a bunch of issues there, in fact, they just had the tube counts out at West Henrietta and Martin Road. They'll put the tube counters out there. It counts speed, numbers, distribution, and if they see that it warrants, they have formulas that say, if it's more than this, put in a light. If it's less than this, don't. They operate that, unfortunately, in my opinion, they don't take other considerations into effect enough as far as I'm concerned, because we're running against that right now with authors as a perfect example, where you've got an elementary school with school buses that have to make lefts onto a busy state route. Ultimately it's going to be up to the state and what their formulas say. Any other questions? Is anything from the audience? And that includes online. Okay, Kevin, why don't, so that they can stay where they're at, come to the microphone at the table.
Kevin Yost, 1474 Middle Road A. I have a few questions. Number one, I assume this is the land between the golf course and the fire district station number 6 and training center.
Sort of, Kevin. It's to the east of the golf course. It's on the western edge of Erie Station Road, and again, it's where Erie Station Road joins up with Scottsville West Henrietta Road. But it's more, think of it south of the Scottsville Thruway rest stop.
Okay, so it's actually south or west of the golf course, it's not near the park facility.
It's not near the fire facility at all, no.
Okay. And then number two, is this happen to be land that was previously owned by previously known as Home Properties Incorporated?
I don't know who used to own it. I do know that and again, its name is literally called Riverton Parcel A. It's not the original Riverton plans. The original Riverton plans were much, much larger. When they scaled them back to its current size in the, I want to say mid to late 80s or early 90s, there were a number of undeveloped parcels left, including Parcel A, which we're talking about now, Parcel E, which was here not too long ago. The other ones have already been developed. So these were the last two and these again were not set aside to be undeveloped. They were set aside, not even set aside. They were always intended to be developed as part of the Riverton plan. And so again, because these layouts don't match the exact original Riverton plan, our job is to say, is what they're proposing meet the original intent of the Riverton development? And if you'll recall, we did this with Parcel E. I went through, for days, I went through all the old records, all the old minutes, a bunch of stuff that the town clerks had gotten me from public hearings in the 70s, a bunch of maps and stuff that Roland from engineering got me, with all the, again, from the as-built and everything, and went through and those public hearings and bulletized what the intent was in terms of the breakdown of housing. There were 4 housing types: single-family homes, townhomes, which were essentially single-family homes with a common firewall, garden apartments, which were essentially apartments that were each had their own entrance and looked out onto a garden-like setting and did not have a large parking field. And then apartment buildings, which were essentially everything else. They called them mid-rises because originally they were talking about that they could be up to 50 feet tall. When they scaled back Riverton, they put the height at, I think, 35 feet. And so they're really low rises now. But anyway, those are the 4 types. If you look at the breakdown of what's there today and what the proposed percentages are, there's room for no more apartment buildings. All the apartment buildings have been built out. Riverton Parcel E essentially filled up the last of the garden apartments. There was some room for additional ones. They used up the last of them. The townhomes, I think was, and this is from memory, 28%. There's currently like 14 or 15%. So there's room for additional townhomes. They have plenty of room for townhomes. Single family homes, there was no limit. Single family home is essentially all the other home types. The single family homes from a percentage from the original is way over the original. And the reason for that is there were 2 other large portions of Riverton that if you look at the original plan, so the whole Mickens Bend area, all of that, and the whole Cornflower area, those were supposed to be office parks and industrial, not homes in the original plans. At some point that was changed. They were allowed to go to homes. So all those additional single family, they were all done as single family homes. That brought the percentage of single family homes way out of whack. But again, the way it was always said when in those hearings is the single family homes had the least impact. So those weren't the ones that had the limits. It was essentially, there was a cap on apartment buildings, garden apartments, and townhomes, and then everything else was a single family home. But that's, you know, again, it's not that the other ones were built out of ratio. It's just when you added all those additional single family homes, it skewed the percentages some. So the other things they talked about is the percentage of green space. This was a low density development. They certainly meet that. They wanted to have a lot of green space in and around the homes. They've met that. they wanted a lot of civic space, so trails, connections to parks. They wanted it to be very interconnected so that no matter which part of Riverton I lived in, it was very easy to get to other parts of Riverton. Now, the one thing that isn't there, and the state will never allow us to put it in the original plan, there were 3 underpasses. One was under Scottsville West Henrietta Road between the clubhouse area where the tennis courts are and the market area where the Miller's Pharmacy is. That one is there. The second one was under Countess Drive to go over towards Lake Pamela, and it was to get to what was going to be the office area. So again, this was the idea of people live near where they work. That one went in, and there was supposed to be a third one to go under what eventually became, when they did the Erie Station extension, that one did not go in. Part of the reason that one did not go in is you're starting to get close to the river. You might have needed a boat to go through that tunnel. So they didn't put it in back then, and there is no way the state is going to allow it to go in now. So that goes back to why we're doing this, finding the safest point for a crosswalk and asking them to connect to it, because again, that is in the original spirit of Riverton. So when you look at all of that stuff, it absolutely meets, I think from a special permit standpoint, this is my opinion, not the board's opinion. My opinion is, from a special permit standpoint, this is a piece of cake. From a seeker standpoint, there's a couple issues. The biggest one is one that we have an issue with, but unfortunately the seeker authority with regards to traffic does not, and that's the state. So, you know, again, we can make recommendations to the state, but ultimately it's the state's decision. We can also, you know, talk about what they can do to make it safest, and that would be, you know, again, I wouldn't want any house right up to the corner where I'm turning out to from a sightline standpoint, but again, that's not how this is designed and laid out. They don't have that, and even the addition of that sidewalk guarantees that no hedgerows are going to end up along where they can block the sight lines coming out of this development. So it's as safe as we can make it. Can the New York State DOT make it safer? They absolutely can. Will they? I don't know. That's kind of where, that's my personal summary of it. You guys may differ, but I don't know if developers, if you agree, disagree with anything I've just said, but
That's a pretty good history lesson.
right. So, okay.
I had one last question regarding this, and hopefully it's not off topic, but does the town intend to either add the old Riverbend Park to the golf course and or acquire other developable lands to the east side to expand the golf course 18 holes and or reattempt to privatize the golf course and the 2 adjoining lands I just talked about for having private 18-hole golf course?
So no, unfortunately, long ago, the additional land that was the 18-hole golf course was sold. And the money from that was used to buy Martin Road Park.
I know that, and it didn't pan out because because either or both the State Department of Office of Parks, Historic Preservation and Recreation, and or the federal HUD didn't sign off on it. They both need to sign off on it, and it didn't happen.
Well, where that land was is now full of houses. And if you want to go and try to evict all those people.
No, I didn't realize that. I pretty much, my understand, I don't go down there very often, but I pretty much understand that the north side of Erie Station Road extension between the fire facility and the golf course is pretty much undeveloped.
Well, that's what this parcel is.
Okay.
So we would have to buy it from them. But that, interestingly enough, was never part of the golf course, ever, in any of the plans. The golf course.
I kind of thought until I realized tonight that could be for expanding to 18 holes because I don't know if the peninsula and the river Riverbend, the old Riverbend Park would be enough for 18 holes. Maybe it is, I don't know.
It would have been tight. They would have been short holes.
Yeah, I would support that, and I would support trying to privatize it if the powers that be at Washington and Albany would support it.
The problem is these people have property rights. We would have to buy the property from them.
I wasn't talking so much of Faber and Forest Creek. I was talking more about the golf course itself and the adjoining former Paper Riverbend Park.
Riverbend Park would be enough for maybe 2-3 holes. That's it.
Okay.
So it would be a 12-hole golf course, which isn't very common. As far as whether the town still owns the golf course, the clubhouse is operated by independent. We've been in discussions with him about different options. I don't know which direction that's going to go. So we're exploring a number of different options. But the golf course itself still belongs to the town, and essentially they lease it from the town to operate on that.
The private owner owns the clubhouse and the parking lot, as I understand.
Correct.
As I understand, Emino got out of it a few years ago.
So I don't want to go into the details of that here, especially it's not germane to this particular public hearing. Nor would I want to go into that in great detail in a public setting like this. But if you want to talk about it more, you can set up an appointment. I'm happy to go over with you, showing what we're doing. But like I said, this just isn't the proper setting. So thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay, so I think same thing. I'm going to close the public hearing.
No other comments?
Traffic
No other
impact
comments?
study. What's that?
No other comments?
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there any? Well, I'll ask for other comments before I
Okay.
close it here. I'm just saying what the process is. Assuming there's no other comments, we'll be closing the public hearing. And when the traffic impact study is ready, we'll advertise, have the final hearing, and do potentially, assuming everything has been properly mitigated, we can make a ruling that night. If everything isn't proper, I mean, we could potentially, depending on whatever, whether we rule on it that night, whether we table it, that'll depend on how the answers come back. So, okay, any other comments, any other questions, including online? Hearing none, I close the public hearing for special use permit application number 2021-034. Thank you for coming in, gentlemen. We look forward to the updated traffic study. Again, if you guys think of additional questions that you want them to answer before the next public hearing, send them to me or Chris, and we'll get them to them so that we can have the answers. They'll have time to research them in detail, and or if it's something that we have to answer for your questions.
So to be clear, we're still looking to get a ruling on either water, someone else to look at that land and make sure about the wetlands,
Correct.
right? That's on our side.
Chris is gonna talk to a consultant, one
Okay.
of the town's engineering consultants, to give us opinion, get a more definitive ruling on that.
Okay.
And then, obviously we'll share it with you guys as well. And then we're waiting for the traffic impact study from them. And then I might have, Chris look into the, we'll look into the details of the clearing thing a bit more to address Mr. Stafford's concern, although I'm not exactly 100% certain how that applies. But we'll take a look at that.
And then the last thing would be just inquiring about a traffic light potentially there.
And
Well, I am going to contact the New York State DOT to see if,
I'm just, my question is what we're going to do if they violated their permit. That's
if they violated the old permit?
the one that was issued in 2020 for 1 year.
Don, do you want to
Well,
address that?
that's a code enforcement issue. It's not an issue for a special permit.
Okay.
And they, he said here, he walked
he-
the site with Chris.
So
can
with
Chris-
with the root balls being upside down, if a tree tips over and you cut the root ball off and chop the tree up, then it's based on its nature, the thing that was keeping it standing, take that off, it's gonna fall roots up.
But it's
I
not
still-
going to roll over.
It
I still
is.
think this is not an issue for a special permit hearing. It's a
Okay.
code enforcement issue, unfortunately, or
Okay.
fortunately. But again,
Then I don't-
we heard the applicant tell us he walked the site with a couple of our staff, told them what they were doing was okay.
Right,
So I think we can check with those staff members and see if that
right.
happened. And that would be a way to deal with that code enforcement matter, at least a starting point.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much. We have another
Thank you.
public hearing starting at 8 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
I know, it was scheduled for 8. I'm gonna actually recommend we take a 5-minute break. I'm sorry, but we've been going since 6.
Yeah, that might be a good idea.
Clerks, if you're listening.
Jenny's on her way with water.
Thank you. You might already be on it.
She was good when I tried to get out. Yeah, we work like 1 day a week in the office. What I told her, what I saw outside, was completely different than being allowed as a one. I think you can, that's right.
Possibly another. I did, it was awesome. Our bags, we should grab it. Yeah. Apparently your bags could have gone really.
You want a water? I'm not gonna, I have my own. I keep saying, or I bring my own. I don't want to drink out of plastic. Because I don't want to waste it.
We usually go one back.
See, Steve, this is why I tell them we need food. Well, it's funny because I ate like at 4:30 or something, and it's 9 o'clock at night.
Yeah, let me know.
Thank you. Her ex-student is going to bring us in sushi.
Yeah, let me tell you, that is some of the best sushi I've ever had. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Richard.
Right.
I thought you were gonna say that you got all that chocolate stuff and sushi.
I know, I thought you put sushi in there too.
In between all that stuff and all that
It's so funny when my son would come home. Oh,
I
but
used
you
to
gotta
love
unwrap
Ho-Hos.
them. So ho-hos, you gotta take off the chocolate on
That's
the
right.
outside, and then you gotta unwrap
Unroll it.
Oh,
We would try to take the chocolate off in one continuous peel.
yes. And then you have to peel the foil from the white paper when you're done.
Right.
There's like, oh yeah, we would have loved that. We would have like tipped you for that one.
The other one I liked was the Hostess cupcakes.
So those are my road trip. When I'm on a road trip, driving, for a while, I stop and grab myself Hostess cupcakes. Those are like, oh, so good, so good.
I was telling Don.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, you gotta, then you don't feel so bad, right? I love Lucky Charms. Oh, I love Lucky Charms. I don't know.
Joe went shopping and we needed cereal. And normally, I'm aiming for healthy or plain cereals. He comes home with Cocoa Puffs, honeycombs, and Cinnamon Toast Crunch. And I'm like,
Crunch is my daughter's favorite. Cinnamon Toast Crunch. But my son could eat like a box of cereal. He would get a bowl like this and half a box of cereal and half a gallon of milk.
I don't want to bother the
It's a
residents.
snack.
yeah.
And also, Rob, they sent the maps they sent, they were all upside
Oh,
down.
yeah.
So every time I'm trying to read.
Oh,
and
this is yours.
Every time I flip it,
Right.
every time I flip my tablet, it goes upside down again.
Flips it the other way.
I know.
So.
Okay. Ready to resume. Okay, next up, we have public hearing for the proposed local law to update the Henrietta Ethics Code at Chapter 109 by repealing and replacing the same with a revised version. Go ahead, Bob, introduce yourself and have at it.
Thank you very much. I am Robert Cook, here in my capacity as Chair of the Ethics Committee. I'm joined by two of the other Ethics Board members, Scott Bigger and Linda Salpini. And my understanding is that Naomi is also online, so there may actually be a majority of us here.
Unless we lost her with the work being on Central Time, as
okay.
Scott Bigger put it.
All right, well, we may have
Gotta
lost
get
her.
you on the record there, Scott.
What I'd like to do to start off is to go through a very brief slideshow that summarizes the proposal. And then we can go to questions. Everyone has had a chance, I presume, to take a look at the proposed local law, which has been fine-tuned by the town attorney, but is in some in substance consistent with the recommendations of the Board of Ethics. So if we can move along on the slideshow, the next slide. These are the current members of the board, myself, Scott Bigger, and Linda Salpini, as I mentioned, and Naomi Pless, JD Jackson, and Mary Bisbee Burrows. Next slide. So what was the ethics board's charge when we started this process? Really, I guess, about 2 years ago, plus or minus. We really were asked to draft a code of ethics that is clear and unambiguous as to appropriate behavior for town officers and employees, expand transparency regarding potential conflicts of interest by adding provision for an annual financial disclosure report for elected officials, key managers, and board members, and also to advance accountability by empowering the Board of Ethics to review the annual disclosure reports, consider ethics complaints from citizens, which it can't do now, and refer any perceived misconduct to the town board. Next slide. So, pardon me, what are the differences between the existing Board of Ethics and what has been proposed? There are three main differences. The current Board of Ethics offers advisory opinions to town officials upon their request concerning concerns that they may have about potential conflicts of interest. The proposed local law would retain that function of being able to offer any town official an advisory opinion about conduct they're concerned about. But in addition to that, it would be able to field complaints from citizens about concerns they may have about ethics of town officers or employees. And then offer an advisory opinion to the town board as well as to the complainant concerning that conduct. And the third piece, which we piloted this past year, although without binding statutory authority, was to review annual financial disclosure forms for potential conflicts of interest and advise those filers in the town board concerning any potential conflicts. The idea being, again, expanding transparency and accountability. Next slide. The proposed local law has 3 sections. The current code is Chapter 109 of the town code. The proposed local law would maintain Chapter 109, but turn it into 3 articles. The first article would be the Code of Ethics, which effectively is all that exists right now. Article 2 would empower and define the powers of the Board of Ethics. And Article 3 would authorize that annual financial disclosure part that I talked about a minute ago. Next slide. So what does the Code of Ethics do? Article 1 would define those interests of town officers and employees, that is financial and material benefits, that constitute prohibited conflicts of interest and those that must be disclosed. It would establish standards of conduct for all town officers and employees. It would prohibit the receipt of gifts of $75 or more to town officers or employees if they may reasonably inferred to be intended to influence official duties. And it would require, as I said before, town employees to annually acknowledge receipt of the Code of Ethics as well as to do financial disclosure. Article 2 is the next slide. Article 2 establishes a 7-member Board of Ethics. I should say parenthetically that the Board of Ethics had recommended a 6-member board, and the town attorney in his review bumped it up to 7 members. Those 7 members would be each appointed for 3-year terms that would be staggered. The idea being that no one authorizing supervisor or board would be able to stack the ethics board in any one year. So, and at least one member would be from each of the 2 major political parties, something that is not currently part of the board. And the board itself would annually elect one member as board chair to maintain some measure of independence from the appointing authority, which is you folks. So what would the board actually do? The board would have advisory and limited investigatory powers. It could issue confidential advisory opinions to town officers and employees upon written request. It would receive and review the annual financial disclosure statements and offer advice with respect to how to fix something if something were found. It would receive and hear written citizen ethics complaints and issue advisory opinions with respect to those. It could adopt appropriate rules and regulations to further its duties. And it would be required to provide an annual report of its activities to the town board, which would include any recommendations for changes to the code of ethics or to the ethics board's operations. Next slide. Article 3, which deals with the financial disclosure. It would require, as we did this year, the filing of annual financial disclosure statements on a form adopted by the town board, which would try to focus on the potential for conflicts of interest. And those officials that would be required to file those statements would include, as was the case this year, the supervisor, town board members, members of other appointed boards of the town, department heads and deputies, the assessor, town clerk and deputies. The Board of Ethics has revised the form that was used this year. I think the pilot was very effective in fleshing out some issues with that form. And we have proposed an updated form for the board's consideration if the board ultimately decides to amend the ethics code and replace it with this code. The financial disclosure statements would be a public record, but only if as redacted. And the board would be able to authorize or recommend criminal referrals or civil penalties in an amount not to exceed $500 for knowing and willful violations of the chapter, but only by referral to town court by the town board. So in effect, the ethics board, if, for example, someone refused to resolve some type of a conflict, the ethics board could make a recommendation to the town board that there should be some sort of a sanction for that individual. And then if the town board saw fit, they could refer it to the town court for consideration of a penalty.
Don, I assume that would work similar to other code enforcement type things where basically the town prosecutor would make the case to the judge.
In this case, I don't remember that section being here. I'm looking for it.
Don, can you turn your microphone back on?
I don't see the bottom paragraph of this slide in the code.
Can you give me an example of what that would be like?
So if somebody refuses to fill out the financial disclosure form.
Right, it's section 109.13.
Okay, let me take a peek there.
A and B.
Okay, I see it there.
I mean, essentially, it's like a violation of the code, right?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think through how that would work in practice. Yeah, I mean, this isn't a zoning code violation, so it would be,
It basically would require a town, I think we might want to detail that process. So would it require a town resolution? And that, in which case then the town prosecutor would bring it to the judge and say, the town board has passed, resolution 1234 saying that this individual is in violation of town code section such and such for failure to complete their financial disclosure form, for instance.
But that wouldn't be the only reason.
It's not the only reason I'm
no.
using it as
Thank
an
you.
example, but they'd have to cite the portion of the code that is in violation.
Right, absolutely.
I mean, go ahead.
Well, the point is, you'd have to cite the section of code that's in violation.
Right.
Right, and then, as with anything else, it would be up to the town judge to make a determination with respect to it.
So for instance,
Yeah,
let's
I'm
say
not
that
sure how
somebody
this
takes
would-
an improper gift or has an elected official has the highway department do work on their personal property. Some of that also then, it's not just an ethics violation, then you start to potentially get into essentially theft of services, right? So, that's one of the things we've talked about in terms of that's where you talk about the criminal referral, right? Because some of that, if that unethical behavior, like I said, using the example I just said, has the highway department doing work on their personal property, that's an abuse of taxpayer funds, and that is to my knowledge, that's a criminal offense.
Criminal offense, right?
Yeah, that's an interesting question about how this gets before the judge. Would you envision, the town prosecutor being directed to serve like an information or something against?
That's exactly what I would be thinking of.
Yeah, okay,
Very similar to what they would do with the building code.
okay.
The difference is we have code enforcement officers who bring that. In this, it's the Board of Ethics recommends to the town board, but it seems to me that a town board would have to pass a resolution for it to go in front to the prosecutor. Do you agree?
I agree with that.
Is that how it's stated? Or if not, we should adjust that. I just like it spelled out because again, I think we need to understand that process.
Yeah, well, if it needs to be further spelled out, certainly it could be.
I would just say,
I think-
that the town board by resolution would bring the case to the court to be tried by the town prosecutor, something like that.
It currently states after referral from the town board.
Right.
Right, but it's not clear who we're referring it to, so I think we should just make that a little clearer. I'll work with that, Don, on that.
Okay.
And we'll get that update out
That's fine.
quickly.
And I'm not sure if there's another slide. That may have been the last slide.
Is there another slide?
Is there another
Becky?
slide? I think that's it.
That's the end of the slides that I have.
Very good. That's what I thought. Okay.
I think
I also just want to note that Naomi Pless is here if you need to speak with her. She's on Zoom.
So I will just say this, Naomi, if you have a comment, raise your hand and they will enable you to speak. Yeah, so like I said, I just think I think that was a great summary of the differences. I think, just again, procedurally, I think we ought to nail that down because in the other sections of code, again, it does say, this is like in the zoning code, it talks about code enforcement officer or whomever, and they're the ones who bring it to the town prosecutor. I think we ought to just say that in fact, in one of the sections of the zoning code, for instance, where like the actions we took, I don't remember if it was last summer or the summer before, against the delinquent properties, to get to that step, it outlines that you need a public hearing, and that in this case, I don't think we need a public hearing. I think we just need a town board resolution. But in most of the sections, it talks about, in other words, not just a referral, it talks about how it actually gets there, how it gets to the court.
Right.
Okay. That makes sense.
And so, like I said, maybe if it just says that on recommendation of the ethics board, that the town board, if the town board by resolution can refer it to the town prosecutor to try it in town court, something like that.
Okay. Other comments,
other
concerns?
questions?
Naomi does have her hand raised.
I will be good to my word and give her a chance to speak.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Yeah.
All right. I think just to be clear that the $500 fine really only applies to the financial disclosure, and that would be filing a false financial disclosure or willfully refusing to file. It doesn't apply to the other kind of ethical things that we talked about, where a citizen brings a complaint or somebody from the town asks for an opinion. I just think that's an important.
So again, what you have is typically at the end of any large section of code like that, there'll be a portion that talks about violations of this, chapter of code. And so it would be with regards to if there was a specific violation of a portion of the ethics code.
Yeah, I just want to say that the way it's currently worded, it refers only to the annual financial disclosure. And because it says an individual who knowingly and willfully fails to file or files with intent to deceive, etc., may be assessed a civil penalty in an amount not to exceed $500.
Okay.
That's.
Hold on one second. I want to make sure. Becky, can you hear Scott when he's speaking? So that one's.
This one's on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was like, just a little bit, not, this is better. This is better. Yeah, thank you.
Steve, what you're talking about is after a complaint is received and the ethics board looks into it, the ethics board can complete its review, and upon a majority vote of its members, it can take any of the following actions. It can issue a non-binding and advisory written report to the town board, advising the town board to issue a statement, issue a censure, refer to law enforcement, refer to the state attorney general, so on and so forth. Or the ethics board could refer to the state attorney general on our own, or to human resources if it's purely a human resources type action. So as Naomi said, the potential fine that would go to the town, potentially go to the town justices in the court, is really only for knowingly and willfully providing false information on a financial disclosure form, or for not submitting a financial disclosure form. So there are two that's not related to a complaint coming in that's then looked into and a recommendation made.
Okay.
That's right.
So if someone violates the other portion of the code, there's essentially no fine associated with that.
Well, there could be if it becomes a criminal matter, like misappropriation of town resources or something.
Right, but the town can't actually try criminal matters. That's
the town court. That's
no,
when
the town cannot try criminal matters. We can only try civil matters. The criminal would have to go through the sheriff or attorney.
Exactly.
But that still may end up in.
It's still potentially could
within
end
the
up in
town
town
court.
court. But yeah, the point is that only the financial disclosure portion goes directly to the possibility of a fine. Otherwise, it would go to law enforcement if there was, the town felt that was appropriate. If either the board did or the town board did.
My point being, if someone was blatantly unethical, but not to the point where they committed a criminal theft of services, for instance. Okay, and I'll use an example, right? I use my influence to deny, Scott, you building at a development so that I can get Bob in there because Bob wants to get in there. That's clearly unethical. Okay? Did I steal anything? What did I do criminally?
But that's the whole point really of the ethics board issuing ethics opinions, right? The board would issue an advisory opinion with respect to it, or refer it to another agency if it seemed appropriate.
I understand it, but my point is.
But it also, I mean, Steve, to that, depending on who did it, for example, if it was an employee, that might become a really serious HR matter, and that person might be out of a job. If it's a board member, it's a little more complicated.
Right, so it was, I'm going to say it was a board member, and that this board member did that and, didn't properly recuse themselves, and they basically intentionally threw talked other board members into denying a request for somebody who was a friend of theirs, or excuse me, who was competing with a friend of theirs so that their friend could get it. Clearly a code violation or ethics violation. Don, is that typically, would that come under fraud? In other words, is there a crime there?
I think,
It's a great question.
I hesitate to go backwards, but I'm going to, because it's bringing us back towards where I started, which is the ethics board under the guise of the state is not positioned to do this kind of thing.
I understand.
That being said,
Okay.
we're doing it. And so I wouldn't recommend setting up basically a whole criminal procedure on and finding process.
We can't do
to
criminal. My question is that criminal?
Well-
Is potentially that could be, someone could find that as
Well,
fraud?
whether it's criminal or not, if you were to go to court to prosecute this, the kind of litigation that would be involved in prosecuting something that would be full scale, it would be a big deal. And so, I favor the way that we talked about setting it up the way that it's set up here, which is to have these things you can do, which is issuing a statement, issuing a censure, referring it to law enforcement if we do think it's criminal, referring it to the AG, referring it to any other department of the state of New York. No,
I agree. I just want to make sure everybody's clear, because I don't want someone to say, well, then using that scenario I just gave, if an attorney general does not, or district attorney decides not to pick it up.
Well,
Right,
Steve,
but
if
as an advisory board.
Yes.
I'm not saying it's wrong. I just want people to understand.
Okay.
But as an advisory board, what we recommend to you as a town board be in this form.
But the town board can't
Steve-
take any action on
Let me
that.
finish,
But-
because then it becomes part of the public record. And if you guys as elected officials have to answer for that during your next election.
Well,
Or you have to, this might show up in the court of public.
I agree.
Okay, I'm gonna, Robert's rules here. No, Robert's at the podium. Okay, so, Bob, go ahead.
What I was going to say is this, I think that, the scenario, the hypothetical that you laid out would be incredibly fact-specific. So whether or not there's criminality involved is possible, but possibly not. And I think that that's exactly the kind of scenario where the ethics board would be likely, and obviously we would only be able to determine that on the facts of that specific case, but would be likely to make an advisory opinion to the town board, but also make a referral to the Attorney General's Bureau of Public Ethics at a minimum. And I think that's the beauty of the way this is set up, is that it gives a lot more flexibility to both the ethics board and the town board itself to actually figure out whether something is an ethics violation that ought to be considered or ought to be sanctioned. And so, and a minute ago, you were saying that the town board couldn't do anything, and that isn't true, because if the ethics board makes a referral to you, and it makes a referral to the AG or wherever else it might do it, the town board then has the option of acting on the basis of that advisory opinion. You could sanction the employee, you could rather censure the employee, you could yourselves deem it a human resources issue that may lead towards some other possibilities in terms of the person's employment tenure. So there are a whole variety of issues. You wouldn't be able to prosecute the person, but I don't think you want to be able to do that anyway.
So I'm going to recognize myself, and then Naomi, you will be next. So again, when I said do anything, I meant from a code violation standpoint.
Right.
And so
That's true.
again, I'm not talking about HR, because that's a whole different category. I'm talking about, you know, again, a board member, whether it's town board, planning board. And so, you know, now with planning board and other zoning and those ones, they serve at the pleasure of the town board. So on cause, the town could remove them from position. For an elected official, we cannot. And the point being also, my point, doing nothing, I meant, my point is we couldn't refer it to the town prosecutor to hit them with the maximum potential fine if in front of a court. What would happen is if a district attorney or attorney general does not pick it up, then it's done as far as fines or anything like that. And again, I'm not saying that that's wrong. I'm not arguing it. I just want to make sure because one of the things that comes in, I want to make sure people are clear is what we're putting in place.
Right.
Because, one of the problems you had with the old system is people thought it was one thing and it really was another. And so again, Don gets on his horse about not wanting to have any sword, right? When we talk about sword versus shield, we're giving a dagger, right? A dagger that can call up and hand off to the attorney general, right? But the point is, we've got a little bit of that ability because we thought just advisory to the town board is ineffective when the ethics violations are happening by members of the town board, and especially if there are individuals on the town board who, for political reasons perhaps, are staying silent. Again, no system is perfect because, as we point out, the ethics board does serve at the town board, and as I'm going on potentially my third term, I could have replaced the entire ethics board multiple times over, right? But the point being, this to me is better than what we've got today. It, I think, strikes a good balance between having some ability to refer if there is what we deem might be a serious issue. And again, we're not expert enough from a criminality standpoint to know that, which is the whole reason why we're talking about that we would hand it off to a DA or an AG to make that determination, not us. Or if it requires criminal investigation, whether it's state police, Monroe County Sheriff, somebody like that who has investigatory capability. But without it being completely ineffective as far as most people are concerned, if it's just an advisory. And I know that potentially opens us up to even that referral opens us up to a little potential, but I think we or you guys as the ethics board and me and the one who really put this charge to you, believe that extra little risk is worth it for the efficacy. Because the thing is, if an ethics board if people don't have confidence in an ethics board, it is useless. If people don't think, and I heard that, 4 years ago, 5 years ago. The ethics board is useless because all it can do is tell the town board in complete secrecy, yeah, this was unethical, and that's it. And so, like I said, I think this is a good step forward. Don, I saw you raise your hand, but unless there's a real reason, I'm gonna recognize Naomi next.
I'll go whenever it's my turn.
Okay, Naomi, you're on. And you're muted if you're talking.
Sorry about that. Okay. Yeah, I'd like Don to go after me because I partly have questions for him. It seems to me, but I'm not sure that as written this is covered, but that if the ethics board felt that members of the town board were doing something unethical, that they could issue an opinion that way. Right now, the way it's written, it sounds like we'd issue that opinion to the town board. It's not clear to me whether that then becomes public, because certainly it would make sense that that could be in the public arena. And I think that's a little bit ambiguous as written, and we might want to consider.
I'm going to let Bob answer that because I believe we did have in there that whereas the ethic board members couldn't talk individually, the board itself could issue a statement. Go ahead, Bob.
Right, yeah,
Is
the
that
ethics
correct?
board itself would have the ability to issue to make public the advisory opinion. One thing it cannot do, though, is include the name of any individual without that individual's consent. So for example, in the situation that Naomi was just talking about, where the board itself is in question, the ethics opinion wouldn't state what board members it was talking about, but it obviously would be pretty clear to the public ultimately who was being referred to.
Yeah, the thing is that as it's written, it says that we issue a written report to the town board. It's not clear to me that that is necessarily goes in the public record, but maybe it does. I mean, that would be one question I have. A second question I have for Don is he mentioned the possibility of censure, but we don't, the ethics board would not have that. We could recommend to the town board that they could issue a censure, but that wouldn't be a power as written that we would have. And the third thing is I was unaware that we were moving to a 7-person board, and I was just wondering what the thinking was there. Thank you.
Don, go ahead.
Okay. So a few things. First, section 109-6, which is in Article 2 of the code and is, let's see, I think it's in Article 2. Let me be sure. I guess it doesn't really matter what article it's in. It's in Article 1. It's in Article 1, which is the meat of the ethical standards of conduct, provides that a town officer or employee who violates the code may be censured, is fined, suspended, or removed from office or employment in a manner provided by law. So that's the enforcement provision under Article 1. The enforcement provision under Article 3 does deal specifically with the forms, and that's the $500 fine. Article 1 has its own enforcement provision, which provides what I just read to you. When I go and look at general municipal law dealing with ethics or conflicts of interest, it provides that an employee or officer who violates, in this case, the general municipal law ethics, which essentially incorporate what we're doing here. So a violation by a municipal officer or employee shall be guilty of a misdemeanor. And so, I think that does open up the door here to seeking fines or criminal sanctions for these kinds of violations. It might make sense for us to have a discussion with the county in terms of how they might deal with this. I actually would suggest that does make sense. I just want to know how they might deal with this, because certainly I don't think that our current prosecutor would deal with this. Is it the county DA now that deals with like traffic ticket violations? Who deals with that now?
In our town, it is.
It is, okay.
The town has the ability to appoint a local prosecutor to do it, but the district attorney's office handles it right now.
Okay, maybe you and I should put our heads together or maybe after that I can reach out to the DA. I don't know if you're comfortable with that given your position, but I certainly be happy to do that to see if we can paint a clear path. I do think that this is a little muddy, and I don't want it to be that way as we go forward.
I agree. That goes back to what I'm saying. I want to make sure we're crystal clear on the procedure if one of these things comes up.
Okay,
because you don't want ambiguity at that point.
Okay, so Bob and I will talk, and then I'll reach out to the DA and see what they think. I have a few open questions and something.
Could you answer Naomi's question about 7? Okay.
Yep. I wanted to say also that before she even got to those questions, just to be clear, the reason I went back to, hey, look, it was simpler to do it this way rather than the other way is not to say we shouldn't do it this way, but only as an attorney just to highlight some of the challenges that we may encounter in dealing with it this way. That being said, I fully understand the purpose of the approach. as the attorney for the town, I fully support the approach. I support the law, and I understand why we're doing it. So I back it and I support it, just so you know that. I think it's well written the way that it's done. I think we may need a few tweaks here. In terms of this discussion on disclosure, so we are articulating in this law our intent behind how we expect to deal with disclosure. But state law is going to supersede whatever is articulated here if it's inconsistent with what's articulated here. In this case, we have FOIL, we have the Freedom of Information Law, which governs and supersedes this to the extent that it's inconsistent. And I'm not saying that it necessarily is inconsistent, but if there were to be an inconsistency with our position, FOIL would rule. In the case of FOIL, FOIL does not protect the disclosure of facts. So if, for example, the ethics board wrote an advisory opinion and section 1 of that was, here's what happened. There's an argument that that section of the opinion would be disclosable. If the section 2 was, and therefore we advise, we find based on this and advise the following, section 2, that in my opinion, that would be withholdable under FOIL because that is an interagency opinion. Some could argue that the entire thing is an interagency opinion. We'd have to look at that. Finally, regarding names of individuals, there's a lot of FOIL stuff out there about unsubstantiated allegations are persons who have been alleged to do something, but not found to be guilty of that allegation, are protected from disclosure. There are other opinions out there, though, that say when someone is found to have been guilty of conduct, that they are not protected from disclosure because that kind of information is in the public interest to be known. In other words, the public should know that it's taxpayer dollars are funding this person committing this kind of activity. So it does get kind of convoluted, but I think in general, definitely the opinion portion piece or the advisory portion piece of an ethics opinion, there's a very strong case for being able to withhold that from disclosure and keep it confidential. There's a strong case for being able to withhold from disclosure any names of people that are being investigated where those investigations aren't clearly substantiating the allegation. Okay, it gets to be complicated, but that's sort of the overview of those things.
But I mean, ultimately, if it came down to an argument between someone filing a FOILing request and us saying we're withholding that, it would be a judge who would make that decision, correct?
Yeah, so the way that would work is first the access officer, which in this case is the clerk, would get to decide whether that's disclosable. If the clerk denies it, it would go to the town's appellate FOIL officer, which I believe is you, Steve, the supervisor in this case. If you denied it, that could be appealed via an Article 78 to court. Then a judge would get to decide whether that would be disclosed. You don't often see people pushing it that hard. Sometimes news organizations might push it that far. But again, I think when we get to the point of potentially having written records dealing with an ethics investigation, that's something this kind of disclosure concern is something we should consider when we start committing these things to writing.
And we also ought to, and Becky may already know this answer, but we ought to figure out what the retention duration is on those records as well.
Okay. Now to Naomi's questions. I think one of them was about the disclosure, so that's why I went on that explanation. One of them was also about a 7-person board. So just to be clear, we're not definitely going to a 7-person board. I was tasked with reviewing the law and doing a legal review and suggestions. The board finds if the town board finds a 6-person board or any other number of person board is better, then they may go that way. The reason I'm suggesting a 7-person board is the same reason I would suggest an odd numbered board for any board, which is because when you have an even number of board members, you end up with ties. When you have an odd number of board members, you'll see every municipal board, there is. That's at least the big three, the town board, the planning board, and the zoning board are odd numbered boards. That's so that you don't end up with ties. Of course, there's an argument for with a 6-member board, you need a supermajority. You could just say that in the law if that's what you wanted to deal with. But as a municipal attorney who deals with boards, they're always odd number boards. That's why it's 7. I don't know if there's any other outstanding, no, I have here, I wrote town board censure, but I don't remember why I wrote
Whether the town board does have the ability to censure another town board member.
I think so, yeah. I think, so, okay, in the case that the ethics board makes a advisory opinion to the town board, and the town board, one of the town board members is the subject of that. I'm not exactly sure, sitting here right now, how we might deal with that. One way would be to send, to say this is for these 4 members because it deals with this member, in the 2 line essentially. But I don't.
Well, you can't force them to recuse themselves.
Yeah, I
right?
don't know that we could exclude a town board member from an executive session, for example. So they would, they would hear everything, and they would presumably get it all anyways in the end.
Correct.
So in that case, though, the town board, of course, the one person who's the subject of it might not like it, but the other 4 certainly could go through that opinion and decide whether they want to censure.
Oh, I was pointing at you, Mike.
And then if they do decide to go that way, they certainly could come out of that session and issue a censure against one of their own board members.
Right.
Yeah.
How about this? And I got a few questions. If you're done now.
Yeah, I think I got all the questions.
Go ahead, Mike.
there.
So the ethics board, which I'm good with having an ethics board, obviously, but the ethics board makes a recommendation to the town board. Do they have to follow it?
No.
And, okay, so
Recommendation.
somebody could say a town board member or any board member did something, you find it unfounded, you present it to the town board, and the town board could say, well, too bad, we could go after them.
I don't know,
Would
you
it
might
be-
go after them, but could they censure? Let me finish. With or without an ethics board, this town board could at any time censure any other board member.
Yeah, when I think of censure, effectively, I think of a formal statement where you, call someone out, rebuke them for whatever it is they've done wrong.
Right.
You could do that today.
We
just don't have a set process like we do in here for it.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
issue I would have is that it could be used as a political weapon.
Right.
And
Well,
I think that's.
I mean,
should
that
be
could,
everybody's
that could
concern.
happen now, of course. I mean, this doesn't in any way alter the current power of the town board or the town board's current ability to take any of those actions anyway.
So if a resident sends you something, a complaint against any board member from any board, and it's unfounded, is that made public?
Well, I think the board would issue an opinion saying that, that there was nothing to it, that it was unfounded.
I'm going to bring up a perfect example again, and this is a real world example, right? We had a previous member was actually a previous supervisor. There was a complaint that the town was delivering millings to his son's property. Town delivers millings to tons of people's properties in town. There was nothing unethical about it. That would be a perfect example of, to me, where the town board would say, we looked into it. That person the son was in line with everybody else to receive millings. There was no special, no special favors done. This was not an ethical violation done. Now, could the town board, if it was, 4 in one party and 1 in the other, still censure that person for it? Of course they could. With or without the ethics board, they could do that. But the point is, it would at least provide, as independent as it can be, an independent source saying, we looked into this, and based off of the standard procedures that were in place, nothing untoward was being done. that's something we don't have that ability today. So.
Yeah,
So back to-
just to try to answer your question, if I
I
might.
didn't finish it, but
The ethics, in my opinion, the ethics board would issue that advisory opinion saying that it's unfounded. And I believe that would be public, although there are issues about disclosability under the Freedom of Information Law that would need to be grappled with. But I believe that that could and would be, that certainly the intention of the ethics board would be to make that known that that was unfounded.
You know, one thing we can think about, so just so we know, there is a provision in here directly on this topic. I'll read it to you so you know. It says, or at least it touches on the topic. It says, upon request, after review by legal counsel, copies of any written advisory opinion issued hereunder may be provided to the town officer or employee against whom the allegation was made and or the complainant, with redactions where appropriate, or a summary of the current status of the matter may be provided in lieu of the same. Like, for example, the ethics board rendered an advisory opinion to the town board for further action. So there is some provision in there for that. One of the questions this actually raises for me is whether we want to give the ethics board the power to disclose their opinion directly without permission from the town board or without recourse via FOIL to the town clerk's office. That doesn't really talk to that here.
Yeah, I mean, the proposal prior to some of the refinement clearly did provide for that. And it's been curtailed a little bit.
Release it into
in
the
current
wild
draft.
or
I think, I'm sorry, John, to interrupt. I think that was originally in there. If it got dropped, to my knowledge, it was dropped unintentionally. The only thing I would suggest is that they could draft an opinion. I would have it, I don't know how you feel about that, but I would love it if it was subject to review by the town attorney. And I just say that because I'd want to make sure that, in other words, they're issuing a statement that they're not putting, because of the touchiness of what the statement's going to be about, I'd want the town attorney to put eyes on that. I don't know if that puts a town attorney in a strange position, because a town attorney truly actually works for the town board.
Yeah, I think we have to decide in the first instance whether these opinions, regardless of FOIL, but internally, whether we're treating them as confidential opinions or not.
So again, to me, there's two different things. There's an opinion to the town board, which I do see as confidential, as much as FOIL allows. Okay, there is, I'll call it a written statement that the ethics board could make to the public, or, you know, and to me, that is much more limited. In other words, I'm going to go into more detail. I would want the ethics board to go into more detail in their statements of findings or whatever, or their opinions to the town board in the confidential one. A public statement, if you'll excuse the old saying, just the facts, ma'am, right? You know, I don't want a lot of background stuff. Just, it would be, you know, again, going back to my example, it would be, you know, we reviewed the matter of the town vehicles delivering millings to the family of a town board member, as that is standard practice within the town, and this person was shown no preferential treatment. We find this unfounded, or we find this to not be a ethics violation.
Yeah.
That would be the public portion. You know, if there was additional things that, you know, talking about what they looked at and other things like that, you know, there might be additional information in the, I'll call it the confidential one, but the public one would just stick to the facts. That's kind of how I always envisioned it. I know we had something to that effect. I don't know.
Yeah, like I said, there is a provision here that says that we could give us basically a brief summary of the status of the matter.
Right, and I also think that the provision that Don cited before that provides for review by legal counsel, I think that could be expanded very briefly, just to add very brief language indicating that the statement also, the advisory opinion could, a redacted advisory opinion could be released as well. So I really think that it's just a matter of a couple of words to make sure that that's consistent.
And the town, I just want to make sure I got this right. The town board or the town clerk decides what's redacted and what's not?
If it's a FOIL.
Yes, if it's a FOIL.
Yeah, when there's a FOIL request, the records access officer would deal with that, and that's the
The
town.
town clerk would be determined what's redacted and what's not.
If it's
Thank you.
being released through the FOIL process.
Okay,
That's
right.
what I'm saying.
Yeah,
If it's,
FOIL.
if it's being released otherwise voluntarily.
Right.
Or a statement, for example. That's why what I said in the first instance, we need to decide whether we're treating these things as confidential or not, because that informs the answer to your question, which is what gets redacted.
Right. And if it's not treated as confidential, it would be governed by whatever rules we lay out.
Right.
And I think the ethics board's presumption is for disclosure in every case that that's possible. So.
So like I said, I sort of see the opinion offered to the town board, especially, you know, from the advisory opinion or even the review opinion, that I see as confidential, although obviously some of it's subject to FOIL. I think the public statement, that one is not confidential and has to be written with the understanding that it is not confidential. And so I shouldn't have any confidential information in it.
Steve, so if the complaint comes in from a citizen, from an original citizen, what level of detail would you advise to be included in the response to that complainant?
I think that needs to be, because we can't bind that citizen to confidentiality, I think it has to be the public statement.
So will these public statements open up the town to a lawsuit?
That's why I would feel comfortable having the town attorney review it to make sure that's not the case. But, you know, again, any of the, you know, in terms of opening us up to a lawsuit, your statement just now opened us up to a lawsuit. My response to you just opened us up to a lawsuit, right? You know, it gets into, you can sue about anything. But with that said, there's no question some things are going to be riskier than others, which again is why I would want an attorney, town attorney, to look at it, because he would basically say, okay, the way you phrase that, not good. You know,
When you have a moment, I do have Naomi with her hand raised.
okay, thank you.
That's what I say, as I just kind of step back and think about what it is that we have, what we laid out initially, big picture, is it's still an advisory ethics board, but it has these additional powers and duties. And when you say, okay, it's an advisory, what is it, who or what is it advisory to? It's advisory to the town board. And so to the extent we want to expand its powers beyond being advisory to the town board, we need to be particular about that. So if I say if I form a committee and say this committee is advisory to the town board, that means it's delivering a product to you. It would be outside of the bounds of that entity's authority to then start delivering the product directly to others. I'm not saying it couldn't be able to do that, but I'm saying we ought to make sure that that's clear.
Then that should be tightly bounded.
Right.
As to that. So that's why I was saying, in my opinion, that I would have it that the statement back to the complainant has to be that public record. Now, could they FOIL additional stuff? They might be able to, and we'll, you know, again, that gets into the comparative rights of FOIL versus advisory, confidentiality. But I think just we need to narrowly define and bound what that other disclosure looks like and what can be in there. And again, I do think because of the sensitive nature, I I would be much more comfortable that that statement doesn't go out without review by the town attorney. Naomi? Unmute.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I was unmuted, but then I got muted. So I think that the way it's laid out, I think some things would probably never actually get to the town board. I mean, if an employee came and they had a concern that something was unethical, and the board could review that. The Board of Ethics could review that and say, hey, we really think this is okay, and then we could go back just to that complainant, and it really wouldn't necessarily need to go any further than that. And certainly if somebody comes to us for advice, as Steve, you have in the past, and said, this is a situation, are there any ethical issues here? Then we might just go to that one person and say, this is how we think you could best handle it to avoid any ethical situation. And then that doesn't go to the town board. And so, there's different levels of it. And, the question that you were raising before is about, an egregious situation where you're dealing with somebody who is on the town board, or the supervisor himself, I suppose, or herself, if we might move into those kinds of times. And, in that case, that's where the question is, can the Board of Ethics, maybe at their discretion, decide to release a statement that becomes public? Certainly, I would want to hope that the Board of Ethics at that point would, on their own, certainly if I were on the Board of Ethics, I would want to have the town attorney review it just so that I, knew where the landmines were. And I don't know quite how you put that in there. I mean, maybe you say that, I guess you could ask for return review because it actually doesn't bind the board to do anything in particular if you ask for attorney review. And certainly that would absolutely be the sensible thing to do. But I do think that it should be clear that a lot of what could come to the board might never go even to the town board.
So the issue I have with that is if somebody comes to the town board with or comes to the ethics board with a complaint, I do think that is information that needs to be shared with the town board. Put it this way, every complaint that's come in, I've shared it with the town board. Every complaint about employees, significant complaint about employees, I've shared with the town board. We've kept the town board informed on all that stuff because, again, they are the stewards of the town, not the town supervisor. I run the daily stuff, but there's limits. So I can't speak for the town board speaks for the town. And, oh, by the way, I am part of the town board. So anytime we say the town board, that includes the supervisor. They are town council members. I'm not that, but I am part of the town board. So, I do think I get what you're asking. If somebody's asking just an advisory opinion specifically just about themselves, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. No, that doesn't need to go to the town board. Now, if the ethics board does think it's in violation and does have that opinion, I would argue that it should go to the town board then.
And I would agree.
Make sure it doesn't happen, right?
Well, if, under the current scenario, if the person didn't resolve that issue, it ultimately could get to the town board. But presumably, the first step would be the ethics board encouraging that individual to resolve that conflict.
But again, so let me use an example. And again, I'll use the real world example. This time I'm going to pick on me, right? So if you remember when Dollar General was looking to come in at Cartwright's. At the time, prior to them coming in, I had been talking to somebody who had a potential interest in developing the restaurant portion. And while we were in those discussions, Dollar General came in and the realtor called that other individual back and said to him, well, you should make a decision now because if the Dollar General gets approved, the price for this property goes way up. That's clearly I'm now compromised, so to speak, right? I could not be part of that decision. And if I had come to the ethics board and said, this is what happened, you guys would sure as hell say to me, you can't be part of that decision. If I didn't recuse myself, it seems to me it would be and I never informed the board that this had happened. It seems to me you guys would be honor bound to inform the town board, hey, by the way, we're aware of this conflict of interest and the supervisor did not recuse himself.
Right, but actually, we can only, even with the new proposed law, we can only do that if somebody asks us to not initiate. Just
Well,
because we have knowledge of something.
But the supervisor is talking about a situation where a town official brings a question to you.
Right.
And then that town official doesn't take your advice,
Right,
Right.
right. And that could go. Right.
which, that's also to me an interesting question because in a sense, if it creates a little bit of a disincentive from seeking your advice.
Right.
Because now I'm put in the position of if I don't agree with your advice, you're going to go report me.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough thing, but like I said, it's one that clearly I would have been in the wrong had I not recused myself.
Yeah.
And
Not
I
sure
know
what the
that
right answer is.
whoever's lap it got dumped on, I think Rob, you, or was it you or was it, or Rick? Rick was senior at the time. Now it would be Rob because Rob's senior right now. But they weren't happy because it got dumped on them last minute and it was a very contentious subject. But how could I not? I mean, when that realtor made that statement, there's no way I could be involved in that. So, I don't know. That's a great question because John, you're absolutely right. Do you then discourage people from going to the ethics board if the ethics board can bring that up? This is one of the fun, yes, again, it's not easy. I don't know.
We can
That's a
think
tough
about it. I
question.
mean,
Yep.
we got a couple weeks until the next meeting.
Yep. Okay. Anything else? As if this hasn't gone on long enough? Kevin? Well, hold on. Give him the handheld.
Well, Kevin's walking up. Let me say that all of the comments from tonight will ultimately go back to the ethics board in order to take a look at whether there are other revisions that need to be made prior to this coming back for a vote.
Yes, thank you. Kevin Yost, 1474 Meadow Road. I just wanted to say that there were unethical things in past administrations. And I know a few of them did a lot of good things for the town and brought a lot of improvements to the town, but then they also did some things that were unethical, such as taking campaign.
Do me a favor and do not bring up examples. If you really feel the need to, you can. I would much prefer you don't. I don't want to go down this road.
Okay, well, I won't give examples in that case, but it looks like this will prevent what may or may not have happened in the past, and for the future. And then the slide screen did not mention town justices and town court staff. I do know of an example in there. I won't get into it. Maybe that should be included as well.
The reason we didn't include the town justices is because they are covered by a much stricter code of justice through the New York court system.
Well, and not to mention that the town court is a separate and co-equal branch of town government. So
Right.
it can't be bound by rules that the town adopts
Right.
in other contexts. We're bound by Office of Court Administration rules.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Anything else?
I just want to thank everybody that's on the ethics board, that all their hard work that they've put into this. It's obviously that there's been a lot of thought and a lot of work put into this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you very much, Bob.
Thank you,
And
everyone.
everybody,
so much, Bob.
Scott,
Appreciate it.
Naomi, and all the others. Linda. Okay. So Don, again, should we close this and then reopen it when we're ready? Or should we just keep this one open?
Yeah, I mean, I would think between what needs to be done between Bob and I, and also with the ethics board, it might be a few meetings. I
Yeah,
don't know if it's
that's what I'm thinking as well. Okay, so
Maybe
unless there's
close.
objections, my plan is to close this public hearing and we will reopen it when the next draft is ready. Any objections? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. Thank you again for everybody who participated. We are going to take another break for our interpreter and so we can stretch our legs because we're now on hour 4. Following that, we will get into the resolutions. Trying to think. Okay, thank you.
Hey, Terry, I learned
Sue?
something. That thank you? What's thank you? What's thank you? That's thank you. What's this? Work? That's work? Oh, hell, I picked the wrong thing. So this is work? Okay. It looks like, oh, Lord. You guys.
You know what, that's why, just keep your hands down.
Work, okay.
Yeah, 'cause it's
What about this?
or it could have been, that's actually the sign of Trump.
Yeah. That's a Trump sign.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh. Huh.
The hair.
Have you seen, did you watch Friends? Remember where they, remember that?
What was that? What was that? What was that one?
It's slang, right? I mean, it's not really real, right? It's kind of like screw you, but I don't know if it's real. It's not real. No, it's their own thing.
That's this.
Oh, okay, okay.
That's what.
You might be on TV right now.
That's this?
So, yeah. So you were gonna.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we're on. Oh, when Bob showed me that one. What are you doing?
Oh my God. It's a long night already, right? Well, it's not like this all the time, thank God.
I was gonna go home and paint my basement.
We ain't painting tonight.
I was gonna be out here at like 8:30. I'm like, oh, there's no layout.
Wow.
No, no, good out.
Well, let's see.
Let's see,
It won't be long now.
Sure about that?
Well, yeah.
I'm getting hungry for second dinner, Bob.
Oh my goodness. You mean you had a first one? No, I was not.
So my cousin was out of town for a week, and he got, I had a bunch of stuff to do today. I got all that done, and I didn't write no wagons. I bought Twinkies and Ho-Hos, and I bought all kinds of good junk food, Cocoa Pebbles.
Wow.
Cocoa Puffs, that's my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I get up, I got all this junk on the bigger whatever. People were like, wow, kids, and I'm like, no, man.
Unbelievable.
You know, I don't take that. You don't mind.
I don't. I do not mind Kevin. That's coming from Kevin.
Oh, I will take.
No, thank you.
I'm starving.
I gotta say, no thing. I gotta save some, I gotta save for real food.
I mean, we.
They have some at home to eat.
Ordered a pizza.
I don't think the restaurants are gonna be open.
Earlier.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I wonder if
I
there's.
heard you bought pizza earlier.
We should
Yeah, is there any
order
left?
food.
Wow.
Bring it in. Has it been sitting out all
At
day?
least you were smart.
We won't be out of here, we won't be out of here before 11.
No.
To 11?
Yeah, there is cold pizza if people want it. I said that. Oh, you're welcome.
Never eat cold
Stay
pizza.
and do the resolutions.
I don't like cold pizza. If I'm hungry enough, I'll eat anything though.
I'm looking over the list.
I mean, I can't even imagine, she's been doing this since 7 o'clock. Are your hands tired and your mouth and? No, my head is. Your head is? Well, loosen your ponytail. No. I do. If I have a tight ponytail, I get a headache.
I would think, I mean.
Well, yeah.
So the 3 aptitude resolutions fell off because, right? Didn't we ask them for something additional?
Right.
I think they got it all of us.
Oh, no, that was our, no, aptitude, no.
You're thinking about, you're thinking
It was,
about Riverton.
Riverton was the one
Riverton.
that was off. And we didn't even put them on because we knew they were waiting for the traffic studies.
We are live right now.
That's fine.
Oh, they knew we ate a cookie?
That's right.
Or see how hard at work we are for you. I had a cookie for dinner. They heard us talk about
Right. Cocoa Puffs.
We'll mention that when we get.
Because if you look, that's what I wanted, I was gonna ask you about that before the meeting.
If not, if the house is still on the.
No, I don't need this.
Then that means that's the wrong map.
Okay,
We're all.
okay, that's, thank you,
In
thank
this
you, because
room, I
you,
think.
because you said in there.
Right. Yep. Okay. So it's up to you. If you're okay to continue, Terry, you can continue. If you're, feel a need to kick it.
Good, yeah. Go as long as you
Okay.
can.
Okay,
We hope.
we are resuming. Can I get the first resolution?
Hang on 1 second, please.
Oh, come on.
You should be ready to go by now.
Wait a minute here. Sorry.
You can take off your mask too.
Yes, sir.
He's the masked councilman. Need mine?
Yeah, I do. Here we go. Now it's coming up.
I was gonna say, it's just the bills,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have Resolution 11-132, 2021, to authorize bills payable for May 26, 2021.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Oh, that's for the public and online if you're still with us. Hearing none, please call the roll. Oh, we do have one audience member. He's a diehard. Go ahead.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford, Councilmember Safranek.
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Yeah.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have Resolution 11-133, 2021, to accept the final supplemental GEIS for incentive zoning and solar codes and issue the notice of completion.
Second.
So again, this basically starts the clock. In the next board meeting, we'll take a look at doing the seeker determination and then calling for the public hearing.
For 133, right?
Yep. Any other discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford. Councilmember Safranek.
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner. Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have Resolution 11-134, 2021, to approve a grant disbursement agreement and equipment purchase for Breeze Park Exercise Play Trail creation.
Seconded.
I'll just open comment by saying only one of those be it further resolves were mine. The rest were added by Don. I'll just note that again, this was something we put in, 2018. I was actually put in before that under the previous administration, it never got anywhere. We revisited it in 2018, put it back in, and it just got approved. Go ahead, Mike.
And I also want to mention, I'm not sure of everybody who worked on this, getting this project,
right.
but Mike Condello.
He absolutely took the lead on it.
He took the, as far as I know, he was the lead person on it, and I think he, you know, it looks like a great project, and I know he really put a lot of time and his heart into this.
And Jason Kulik also helped a bunch when we were redoing this, so.
Great.
It's a really cool project.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Any further comment? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek. Councilmember Bolzner. Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 11-135, 2021, to authorize the supervisor to send a letter to New York State DOT requesting installation of a traffic control light at the intersection of Authors Avenue and Lehigh Station Road.
Second. So again, I'm going to send a letter regardless of whatever happens with Lehigh Ridge. I think Lehigh Ridge, if it gets approved, will only add to that. But I think it's important that we have a traffic control light there. I don't know whether we'll be able to convince them, but I'm not going to give up that fight.
Lehigh Ridge is the housing development.
That's the housing development that is being proposed to go in at the back end of Authors and Nevins, the southern end. But
Okay.
So, right now, if it was installed, if we install it, is it, the town paying for, would the town pay for it?
if the development isn't coming in, then yes, the town, well, and obviously we would then, it would have to come back before the board to authorize the payment. We'd have to, first off, we'd have to figure out how we're paying for it. It could be part of next year, because I don't think it's anything in this budget, but we could put it in the budget for next year. Yeah, so my proposal to them, because I suspect one of the things is they don't have it in any of their budget, I want to remove that as an objection.
And then if that development is put in, we would try to get them to defray some of the costs?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek.
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner. Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Fellow board members, I have resolution 11-136, 2021. Call for a public hearing on a proposed local law revising the zoning codes with respect to car dealerships and off-site dealership storage lots.
Second.
So again, just looking to clean up a couple things, make it very crystal clear as to how the only allowed location for dealerships is on that stretch of West Henrietta Road from Lehigh Station to Jefferson. And then it also, looks at adding something more permanent for off-site storage of cars, similar to what we addressed at the last meeting, but in a better location where they're not in the big view of, from the public streets. So, okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford. Councilmember Safranek. Councilmember Bolzner. Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have resolution 11-137, 2021. To call for a public hearing on a proposed local law to update code at chapter 240 with respect to driveways.
Second.
So big thanks to Heather, Ashley, Bob, Kevin, Craig, Tim, Chuck, everybody who provided input to help refine this. I think I'm very happy with where it ended up. It's not to say there might still be some additional revision, but I think it does a good job of cleaning up our driveway code so as to reduce unnecessary variances, which are costly for the residents and time consuming for the board and staff here. So I think it does a good job of striking that balance. So a lot of input went into this, and very appreciative of everybody who provided input. Any further discussion? And again, this is just calling for the public hearing.
I don't think it will be quite as controversial.
No, probably not. Hearing nothing further, please call a roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek.
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner. Is the mic still on?
No, she's like a mile away from the mic.
That was an aye, correct?
Yeah, it was an aye.
It was an aye. Okay, thank you. Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Fellow board members, I have resolution 11-138, 2021 to authorize the supervisors to execute an intermunicipal amendatory agreement with Monroe County for the maintenance of a traffic signal system on Calkins Road at the town hall entrance.
Second.
So we went through to make sure we had money in the budget. There's one of the signals we get reimbursed for the cost from the Genesee Valley Regional Market. Between that and the existing funds in that signal maintenance, where you've got enough. So that should have been included in your packet.
Right,
So-
this is something we do we do this, they take care of these lights every don't we sign this agreement every 5 years or something like that?
Correct.
Okay, so it's just. what we've
5-year
done.
term, yep.
Right. And I think I noticed one of the lights out here yesterday.
Yep.
Yes, that's right.
So.
Yeah, so again, what we're going to be doing in these particular ones is that we're going to be upgrading to LED bulbs that cost $1,500. The savings on electricity will pay it back in roughly 2.5 years at the current rates. So.
Good.
Very good.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek.
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have resolution 11-139, 2021 to authorize the supervisor to execute an intermunicipal amendatory agreement with Monroe County for the maintenance of a traffic signal system at the intersection of Colkins Road and Memorial Drive.
Seconded.
So this is the second one that includes an upgrade to LEDs. Same thing. Again, the budget covered all three. So any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley. Are you doing it too now?
I said aye, you just didn't hear
I'm
me.
sorry, I didn't hear you. It's harder not being in the room. Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek.
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner.
Aye.
You're right.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. I think Rob just came in a little early. He was jumping the gun and anxious to get out of here.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 11-140, 2021 to authorize the supervisor to execute an intermunicipal amendatory agreement with Monroe County for the maintenance of a traffic signal system at the intersection of Clay Road and Mushroom Boulevard.
Second. So this is the third in this group. This one already, it's a newer bulb, so it's already LED. our newer signal, so this one is just the maintenance.
And is this the one that's reimbursed by?
This is the one that's
Thank you.
reimbursed by
Regional
the
market?
Regional market, yep. Thank you, Rob. Okay, any further comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley?
Aye.
I saw you dancing on this one. Councilmember Stafford?
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek?
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner?
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz?
Aye. Fellow board members, I have a resolution 11-141, 2021 to authorize the supervisor to sign an out-of-district sewer use contract for the property at 283 Castle Road.
Second.
And again, this one, they're installing the sewer. It goes through a part of the right of way. We're requiring them to put a wire on it so we can locate it. Because since it's going to be in our right of way, if there's ever a know before you dig call that goes in there, we'll get notified. But they are responsible for all repairs, all anything that goes on with it. It's their lateral, even though it's going through the right of way. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley?
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford?
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek?
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner?
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz?
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor and fellow board members, I have Resolution 11-142, 2021, to authorize the purchase of a plow dump truck for the Highway Department.
Second.
Any discussion?
This is one of the small ones we've talked about in the past, right? So it goes
Correct.
into, thank you.
And I know you're happy to know it's a local buyer.
Yep. It-
A local seller, I guess.
Local seller. Yep.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley?
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford?
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek?
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner?
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz?
Aye.
Fellow board members, I have Resolution 11-143, 2021 to call for a public hearing to consider designating 1063 Erie Station Road as a historic site.
Second.
Any discussion? Says we're gonna have a lot of public hearings at the next meeting. Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley?
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford?
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek?
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner? Aye. Supervisor Schultz?
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have Resolution 11-144, 2021, to declare an item surplus material from the Henrietta Public Library.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley?
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford?
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek?
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner?
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz?
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz and fellow board members, I have resolution number 11-145, 2021, to authorize the Director of Finance to close out the capital project fund for the West Wing renovation and return the balance of the funds to the general fund.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley?
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford?
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek?
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner?
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz?
Aye. Fellow board members, I have Resolution 11-146, 2021, to hire personnel and make the attached change.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley?
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford?
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek?
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner?
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz?
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, I have Resolution 11-147, 2021, to accept seeker determination and issue a negative declaration for the aptitude mixed-use development.
Second.
So I'll note that, we've been holding off on this because there were some issues with the safety of making the left turn out of the southern entrance for trucks. And the developer was able to acquire the rights to the property at the top of the hill. So the trucks will now come in and out of the northern entrance, not the southern entrance. And that entrance will go out right at the top of the hill where it will have good sight lines, both northbound and southbound. One of the things you'll notice in the conditions that coming up that we're placing on the property based on that is that they must prohibit trucks from leaving out the southern entrance. We don't want trucks going out that way because it can create a potential hazard. So they could, if they want, prohibited trucks from the road altogether. We'd be fine with that. But the key is from a safety standpoint, it's important that they don't leave from that direction. So
I just want, is that the correct?
That's it, because see how the road goes north of, so one other thing, when they first submitted the plan, the northern road went through the middle of parking lots for the apartments. We asked them to move the road to the very north edge because we didn't want any of the, residents in that parking lot to have to cross the industrial road. So the industrial road is now the northernmost thing on the property so that nobody in the residential area has to cross it.
And it appears it's at the highest elevation too.
Correct. That exit, that's coming from Monroe County DOT as to the exact location of that. But yes, it is based off of their recommendation as to where it has good sight lines in both directions.
Thanks.
Yep. Any other questions on that? You'll notice they did a couple other things. They straightened out that interconnect road between the two. That wasn't as critical once they had the full second entrance, but I do think it makes more sense to not have, if somebody has to cross from the one road to the other, to not have to jog repeatedly through the parking lot. So, okay. Any comments from the public in person or online? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford.
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz, fellow board members, I have Resolution 11-148, 2021, to approve the special use permit number 2021-028 for a mixed-use development requested by Aptitude Rochester LLC to allow the construction of a mixed-use development comprising residential apartments, a park, and industrial uses.
Second.
So you'll notice there's a lot of conditions based off of the seeker findings, as well as a lot of them are conditions that are part of the mixed use development, such as for their phasing plan, since they're delaying the start of the industrial, it has to stay natural until such a time as they put that forth. It goes into the percentages. This is seeker mitigation, since everything is exiting onto East River Road. It's a really easy calculation. All the traffic they put out in the morning, plus all the traffic that comes back in the afternoon, times the rate. We make it clear that because they're delaying the industrial phase, when the industrial phase goes in, they'll have to pay an additional fee based off of the traffic that development puts on. A couple others, like I said, fairly standard things. we make it clear that the southern entrance cannot allow tractor, trailer, semis, or other large trucks to exit, and that they have to put proper signage. We're leaving it up to the planning board to handle that under site plan review, but to make sure that that the signage is put in a proper place. We also, since they are including the multimodal path as part of their civic space, they have agreed to be the ones to build it within their civic space. And so they make it clear that they have to do that within in accordance with our engineering specifications, and that it actually has to be done before they'll get their C of O. And then two others, there's we weren't clear, some of the, going back to the thing you saw, Mike, some of those boundaries of the wetlands have to be determined. So we're requiring that they have those done prior to getting any site plan approval or issuance of building permit. So they've got to get that. It won't change. It doesn't change. We know they're there. They're accounting for it, but obviously they can't get a final site plan approval until those are well defined. And the same thing with the archaeological resources. This whole portion of town is in the archaeological resources. We're not aware of any impact areas, but again, the study was too old. So we basically said, you got to update that and adjust your site plan accordingly. So if they do end up with a pocket and it causes them to shift the buildings, they'll have to shift the buildings. The only thing that would ever cause it to come back to here is if, and again, I can't see it since it's currently an existing entrance, if somehow it shifted the entrance, because that was critical to the seeker. But since it's an existing driveway entrance right now for a house, I don't see how that would be the case. But those are more site plan issues, not our approval. So we're just making it clear that it has to be done before they can get site plan.
One question I had on that when we originally were talking about this, weren't they planning on having shuttle service? And should we put that in there? Student housing.
They were planning on having shuttle.
That's what I mean, when we talk about traffic.
Yeah, that does reduce the amount of traffic.
I would like to see that in there if we could.
You good with that, Don? We've done that in the past.
Conditioning it on having shuttle service?
Yeah.
Yeah, like the other houses, student housing.
Was that accounted for in the East River Road traffic corridor fee?
Effectively, it is. Well, we should double check that.
Does anyone know?
Chris, are you on still? And do you know if so if they use I'll call them the Tom George numbers, because again, they were taken from the actual numbers from the lodge, and they were also applied to the Hill, which is the old racket club. I don't know if they applied that number or they applied a different number. Do you know that answer, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I believe that, yes, they use some of their other, student housing projects as a basis for all this.
But did it assume?
But I think they did talk about using a shuttle. I remember in some of our earlier conversations. Now we do have the applicant here, online rather. He might be able to answer that question.
Because the issue comes into this: if the seeker numbers were lowered because there's going to be a shuttle, then to Councilman Stafford's point, that should be a condition. If the seeker numbers were not lowered because there's going to be a shuttle, then to me, it's not a requirement.
But I think they testified to having a shuttle.
I understand that they're going to have a shuttle, but the thing is, this means they can never take it away. The point is, if from the seeker number, what they're put in there was for whether they don't have a shuttle, we would still have a preference that they do have a shuttle. But the point is, the seeker numbers are based off of them If they're based off of having a shuttle, to me, it needs to be a condition. If it's based off of not being a shuttle, we would prefer they have a shuttle, but it's not required. Because essentially they would have paid additional seeker mitigation.
And I see your point, but
Well, I'm glad
I
they're
see,
here
I
to
understand
answer.
what you're saying. My decision on the traffic was gonna be reduced, so.
Well, again, that's what the traffic numbers are. So let's get the developer, if you have that answer.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Brian Bouchard with CHA. We've been waiting in the background here for quite some time, so glad to answer a question at least. We do intend on providing a shuttle, but the traffic study was not inclusive of that service. It would just be a benefit to further reduce the trip generation that we provided within the traffic study. So I'm not sure that it should be a requirement, but we do, intending on providing that service just as a benefit, because obviously there will be people that, commute to and from campus with their cars. So I'm not sure, that's why we didn't weight the traffic study based on a shuttle, because you can't really provide a volume that would be required for the shuttle. But, the intent, like I said, is to provide that service, but that the traffic study stands alone with the traffic that's generated by the vehicles entering, exiting the site based on the ITE trip generation manual that we use.
So again, then we'll just state it. I don't think it should be a condition. So just so you're clear, one of the other developments that did have hard data as to how much the traffic was reduced, but with the presence of that shuttle, they then adjusted their trip generation and therefore their seeker mitigation based off of that. So that one did have a requirement that they have to have a shuttle.
Understood. Yeah. And maybe that was to further reduce what they were trying to provide for impacts and mitigation. But in our case, it would be a complementary service, and that the study stands alone, as I mentioned.
Great. Yeah. So like I said, in that case, if they ever took the shuttle away, they would essentially have to come back, and in my opinion, they would have to pay the additional seeker mitigation to make up for the loss of the shuttle if it were even approved, depending on how much traffic that put out. But in that particular case, their entrance is more dangerous than your northern entrance. And so it was very important that that one have a shuttle, especially. Prior to this having the northern shuttle with the right in, right out, or excuse me, northern entrance, this one would have been more important. But now that you have a good sight line at the top of the hill, whereas again, I do think it is beneficial to have the shuttle. To me, it's not as required from a traffic standpoint, but.
Understood.
That's where I stand. I don't know, Mike, where you stand, but.
I like the idea of having a shuttle, and I was under the impression, without checking, obviously checking the numbers of the trips, I was under the impression they were gonna have a shuttle.
And they are gonna have a shuttle, that's not the issue.
But they don't have to have a shuttle.
They don't have
Right,
to
they
have
don't
a shuttle.
So they could stop tomorrow, I mean.
It could, but, I mean, the use could also sell tomorrow. There's a lot of ifs, what's in.
Yep.
So like I said, we will just note for the record that the town board would very much like you to have the shuttle and continue to use the shuttle. But again, because the seeker was determined, because of the location at northern entrance and the seeker mitigation was determined without the requirement of a shuttle, I do not feel it is appropriate to put a requirement on the special use permit itself. Does anyone feel differently? If there's enough people who feel differently, you can look at putting it, but then it also might mean they're going to want to come back and reduce their.
I think next time we'll have to ask that question during the time that we're looking for approval to see if it was in the trip. That's all.
Again, it's not too late because we can lower the seeker mitigation amount accordingly.
But even with the shuttle, you don't know how many people would take the shuttle.
We don't, but again, the last one did it off of hard data from another exceedingly similar. It was the Lodge, which is right across the street. It's the same scenario. Not everybody takes a shuttle. It didn't drop the traffic to zero. And people who are on co-op don't take the shuttle, you know, so like I said, but there is no question, if you look at their numbers per unit and this one's numbers per unit, that's why I was thinking, because my recollection is that other ones, it cuts it in about in half, is my recollection based off of the number of units.
Yeah, there's no way for, even if they did it for a year, they may find out that maybe the shuttle isn't needed.
Right.
But it would be nice if they provided the shuttle.
Which they are going to do. I just, like I said, because this one has a better entrance, and they are doing the seeker mitigation based off of not having it, I'm fine with leaving it out and just, again, requesting that they do it whenever they can, which they've committed to doing it. I just, if 5 years down the road, they determine that the shuttle is not cost effective, there's not a requirement at that point. Whereas the other one does have a requirement. If they ever stop using the shuttle, they need to come back. Any further question, discussion? You want to amend, make a motion to amend?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to amend that we add the shuttle.
He amends it, how's it gonna affect
It doesn't, since it's a less restrictive than the current, in other words, less impact than the current seeker, but it will affect the seeker dollar amount. I would want to rephrase this that it's not to exceed 210 or 211,200, because again, I think they're going to be able to show that with a shuttle service that the impact is less. So I will tell you how Monroe County DOT will vote, but they don't get a vote. They would prefer the seeker mitigation, but it's up to you. And again, you can put forth the motion.
Actually, I would prefer the seeker mitigation also for East River Road, because it's that busy. I think personally, it'll be a lesson learned the next time we have one of these projects that comes up, to kind of ask this question ahead of time to find out how the trip generation was calculated with or without transportation. But as far as East River Road, we need the funding for that. So that's why I would just have them do it on an honor system and hope that it works out.
Yep. How I feel.
I'll withdraw the
motion. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes a lot of sense, Rob.
Yep. Oh, good point, Rob.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Anything else from CHA?
Nope, understood. Thank you very much.
You bet. Okay, hearing nothing further, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
You said it too soon.
Oh, aye.
oh, I'm sorry, dramatic pause. Councilmember Safranik.
Aye.
Councilmember Bolsner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye.
Mr. Supervisor, fellow town board members, I have Resolution 11-149, 2021, to approve a special use permit number 2021-007 by Aptitude Rochester LLC to allow the construction of residential student apartments as a component use of its proposed mixed-use development.
Seconded.
So again, same 12 bullets on this one as well. But the first one was about the mixed use. This one is specifically about the multifamily within the mixed use. And it does make clear, let's see, whereas further, I just want to see. Proposal consistent. Yeah, so it does mention, bullet 3 does say that it shall be utilized for student housing. Because again, student housing trips are typically lower than what do you call it? My brain's going mush.
Multifamily.
Thank you. But, you know, like I said, so if they ever wanted to convert this, they would need to come back and modify the special use permit if they wanted to convert it from student housing. Okay, anything else? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barley,
Aye.
Councilmember Stafford,
Aye.
Councilmember Safranek,
Aye.
Councilmember Bolzner,
Aye.
Supervisor Schultz.
Aye. Congratulations, you know, obviously your next steps with the planning board. And, you know, again, to get those two items identified, the SHPO cultural archaeological resources and the wetlands defined. And again, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. So on behalf of the development team and the design team, definitely appreciate the town board's feedback along the last couple meetings, and we definitely look forward to working with the planning board and getting the full development designed and implemented and addressing all those you know, conditions there as well. So looking forward to it, and I appreciate your help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Too. And that concludes the resolutions, local laws and ordinances. As far as I'm concerned, we can skip the rest of the agenda. Oh, you have an announcement? Go ahead.
I just want to say one thing. The library is closed Saturday, Sunday, and Monday for the holiday. That's all I wanted to say.
That's great. Yeah, I guess we have a couple other just key ones. I will note, we did, in fact, but yeah, they're going to throw up the key. There we go. We now own a church.
Yay.
So that's Andy Whitmore came in and yeah, thanks to Craig's Door for supplying the dollar. It wasn't Craig. We still don't know where the dollar came from. But we now, like I said, own a church. Tim Oakes is taking care of changing the core. We're going to go back next week to figure out how we're going to put in the ADA ramp.
That's great.
So
Wonderful news.
do you have one?
I got a few. You can.
Go ahead.
5 minutes.
Keep it short.
So from Parks and Rec, thanks to everybody who participated in the drive-through Memorial Day reverse parade. That was a great time, and thanks to all the town employees who put on it, who planned it. Registration for the RH Kicking Hunger is still open. That race is June 5th. And the virtual is June 4th through 6th, so you can do either one. You can go to runsignup.com to register or donate. On Sunday, June 26th, the Red Cross will be holding a blood drive in memory of Robert Barley Sr. Registration opens soon. Vendor space is still available for the July 4th craft and garage sale at the Henrietta Senior Center. I'll call 359-7055. We'll be hosting the 4th of July fireworks, and Brass Taxi will be playing there beginning at 7:45, followed by the fireworks at 9:45. So more details to follow. We can get into that later. Under the recreation, resident registration is now available for all the summer programs. You can check it out online, and then the Recreation Center will be closed on Monday, May 31st for the holiday. Thank you. Is that quick enough?
Anything?
Nope.
All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Everybody jumped on that. Hearing no objection.